He loves trophies. He loves the game. And today, Daniel Negreanu would love nothing more than to add another title to his already extensive poker resume. Negreanu leads a talented field at the 10K Big Bet Mix final table. Is he on his way to another series title? Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to PokerGo's continuing coverage of the U.S. Poker Open 2022 edition from inside the PokerGo studio. Where else? At Aria Resort and Casino here in beautiful and windy Las Vegas, Nevada. Inside we go. Yours truly, Ali Najad, alongside Brian Rast, prolific cash game and tournament player who has graced us with a little bit of his insights here today. And there is the man of the hour, Negreanu. His second cash thus far, 4 events deep into the U.S. Poker Open. He sits atop the leaderboard with $2.45 million in chips, roughly 2-1 over Rok Gostisa, Tamon Nakamura, Stephen Chidwick, Dylan Weisman, and John Reirden. Rounding things out, Riordan obviously in somewhat dire straits with just $1.25 in front of him. Just about 30 minutes left in level 12. There he is with those now trademarked hoodies of his. He was the champion back in 2021 for $163,000. But obviously the climb very steep and very uphill as we take a look at the payouts. Brought to you by Storm X, $169,000, slightly better than last year's payout. Sits atop, and on tap we have the $31,800 that will go to 6th place. Riordan would love nothing more than to avoid that slot as we get things underway. 10 and 20,000 with a 20K big blind ante, and there is Tamon Nakamura as we begin with pot limit Omaha.
Yeah, Riordan has exactly the starting stack. I played this tournament yesterday. You start with 125K, so here he is with a starting stack in the money at the final table.
Chidwick with a couple of 10s and spades from the cutoff, opens to 50K, 2.5x. Riordan doesn't love the ace-jack 8-4 Badoogie.
Kind of an interesting open, I would say. Maybe like slightly loose,
so
but
are we still switching every 7?
It's a spot where
yeah, okay, still every 7.
The fact that Riordan has only 125K there, it's a hand that's going to play decently well against.
So that's going to be 30. That's 30.
An all-in for only like 5 or 6 blinds. So it's a spot where he sort of effectively has the button, and I think it's a good button open, even though it might be a little loose in the
don't worry.
Look at the format. $10,000 buy-in. We play no limit hold'em, PLO, and deuce to 7. No limit single draw. 40-minute levels. 30-second shot clock and time banks in play as per usual.
You guys can't let
Dylan Wiseman's second straight final table of the series, and it looks like the mood is quite light out there at the final table. Love to see it. Shifting now to no limit deuce to 7 single draw.
At Poker Masters, like in terms of
limping is not allowed.
Or not US Poker Open, whatever.
40 minimum to bring in.
Definitely, in my estimation, and I feel as though you may agree, Brian, one of the gutsiest forms of poker, and really a lot of artistry goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think within the context of big bet games, of which I have a lot of experience, I mean, one of the mixes I play is a lot of big bet games, including ones that aren't traditionally played. I will say that in some respects, because there's only 2 streets, this is maybe the simplest, but that does not mean it's a simple game. And I think there's a lot that goes into this. Not only is there a technical aspect, but there's also definitely a kind of like, does he have it or not, live poker getting reads aspect, because there's a lot of situations in this game where you kind of find yourself in a spot where you're bluff catching. And so, you know, yeah, there's a little bit of like, do you have some better cards in your hand in terms of blockers, but then also just like looking across the table and saying, does this guy have it or not? For whatever reason.
Fairly snug muck
it is Ali
from
and
Wiseman there.
Is it Brandon again?
No, it's Brian Rast.
Gostisa, who is the 50K no limit PokerGo Tour Championship
I'm serious.
winner.
Oh, he doesn't do commentary.
2021,
Busy grinding.
$689,000 of his almost $2 million in
talking
career
about
tournament
us.
earnings was taken in. Yes, they are chatting about us a little bit.
They just tried to figure out who was us, and they did figure out who was us.
Deductive reasoning. 29 years of age is the seat 1 Gostisa,
Fun like Lego.
professional poker player.
You've chosen
Really
different
decorated
configurations.
Yeah,
resume
I have. I
on the
mixed
young
it up.
man.
That's how I
Second,
play.
however,
I
on the
think they're
all-time
randomized.
Slovenian
Yeah,
money
don't.
list.
So because this game is probably
I'm a
the
field
least
player.
played by people, I'll
I feel John having a short
maybe give a
stack.
little bit more like what I'll call basic commentary.
You're
I mean, that
He's not
last
even
hand was
playing for the
pretty
last, like,
standard
6
to
hours
open
in
with
this
the 9 draw. Usually from in a 6-handed table, you're basically open as first in, you're opening any 1-card 9 draw, unless maybe it's a gutter. You know, this is a spot where, again, in the hijack, a 10 draw is a little loose. It definitely helps that he has a decent blocker with the 5. He's also the chip leader, which is so I would say I like his open. Although I would say from like a more kind of theoretical perspective, opening 10 draws. Especially if you say you didn't have a if you didn't have a blocker, you probably wouldn't do it. Now it's possible that being the chip leader, maybe he would even do it in the hijack without a blocker.
All right.
But with the blocker and the chip lead, I think it's a good play.
And Gostisa will defend in the big blind. Obviously, some ICM considerations for him, not wanting necessarily to get involved with the chip leader.
This is going to be.
And this is a cooler, isn't it, Rast? We've got 10-7 against 10-6. Both players get there.
I mean, it's a cooler for one bet. You're not going to see a raise, but both of them, you know, basically caught one of their best cards, and you know, he made his 10-7 draw, and Negreanu made his 10-6. So Negreanu's going to value bet versus the big blind here, always. Who
checking suits now. If you squeeze, you don't squeeze. Squeezing is fun.
He's got to think that a good 10 against a guy who drew 1 and didn't 3-bet out of the big blind is good enough. With ICM, he can't expect the big blind to have some 9s and whatever, but he's still going to bet a 10-6, I think. So this would be a very tight check back that I wouldn't like. Yeah.
180 in the middle.
At 145.
And a fairly healthy $1.45 being bet by Negreanu. And a lot of times these bets create some polarity in terms of it's either a lot of hand or it's like you paired the top card and you're just looking to clear something, right?
You know, with the bet size, I actually, I'm totally fine with Gostisa's call, and I probably call in his spot. I do think that once Negreanu decides to go that close to pot, it is a spot where you're pretty much not expecting the worst 10-7 to almost ever be good versus value.
Right.
And I do think it's a spot where you could consider making a laydown, even though you would normally call there, obviously. But I don't fault his call, and the standard would be to call.
And just like that, it's all over. Sean Perry in second, and John Reirden takes it down.
Wow, 6 hands, I think.
Flashing back here. I don't think he lost a pot heads up, Brandon.
That was real fun.
That was real fun.
Last year's champ has picked blue for this year's final table. Clearly those are his lucky hoodies. I did liken the vibe of that hoodie to sort of like tube worm chic. You just can kind of get sheathed in there.
Wow, he's really bundled up here. Almost no skin showing. All he needs is glasses.
Oh boy, he's so proud of this one.
And Riordan plows it in with the Jack-10 963 convertible. I suppose if need be, although there isn't a whole heck of a lot of sense in breaking a Jack-10 to go for a 10-9, is there?
No, I mean, you know, it'll depend on the action behind him.
Of course.
But
and look at Negreanu. He's got a 1-card 7 draw here, so we'll see how he proceeds.
Yeah, this is an interesting decision for Negreanu, what he decides to do here.
Any raise creates a dry side, but he does move all in.
Which, there's a lot of ICM pressure on this play. It's very hard for people to continue here without a very good hand, which nice play by Negreanu. I think I like it. And he's going to stay pat for sure.
Good luck, sir.
And obviously Riordan knows that
Put in the
His
box.
run here is in jeopardy,
People know.
and
it
is
four
now
across. That's dead for you.
officially over. Negreanu
John.
advising the 4 across is there, rolls the 9 over, and
That's the sweat.
that one played itself straight forward.
9 or 10.
Yes.
Automatic win.
Yeah.
Reirden there has to stay
sweat,
pat.
yeah.
There's no reason to break a jack to draw to a 10-9. You know, if
that
Negreanu
was my only
has
goal for the
a
day.
convertible jack, he's definitely breaking that behind him. And even a convertible 10, he would think about it. Probably stay, I would guess. But you know, I think you've got to stay with that hand once you put in the 5 blinds.
So the chip leader claims the first pelt of this final table as Riordan, somewhat predictably without a lot of good spins, ends up finishing in 6th place.
Couple nice hands.
Good way to start.
Takes home
Yeah.
31,800. Now 42,400 on tap for 5th place as No
was
Limit
a cooler.
Deuce single draw
10-7.
rolls on.
Like I could have been betting and you still
Yeah,
win.
I think it's
exactly.
actually a very underappreciated aspect
maybe.
is, you know, people
Oh, you had
talk
the
all the
worst
time
ones
about
out.
like, oh, hey,
had
how
the
do you
worst
play in
ones out.
tournaments with ICM? And I think like the general community, because obviously No Limit Hold'em is the
didn't feel
game
as
that's
good,
played
you
the
know?
most,
Yeah,
has
the
a
worst
pretty
one.
good idea
10-7's
about
a-
how it
a
affects
good bet
play.
for me.
But it's something where I
10-8's a
think a
little
lot of
close, but I
guys
still would bet
who, you know, maybe get some
believe
criticism
you.
by ways that they play,
I wouldn't have been a
but
10.
because they have a very good understanding of tournament poker and then apply it to mixed games, can have very good
Hair?
results in
Yes.
mixed game tournaments, despite the fact that you might
get
look
that
at
part.
some of their play,
makes sense,
especially in
right?
more
Yeah.
cash game situations,
Studied
and
this
be
game
like,
for
well,
at
that
least
can't be
2
good.
hours, Dan.
Oh, there
But
you go.
you know,
You know what's really
say like
funny?
an example,
Sean
this is a
Perry
guy
did
like
this
Phil
last year,
Hellmuth,
right?
who I'm
And he didn't know how to
in
play
a
the
cash
deuce, so I gave him, like,
mixed
a
game.
15-minute
I'm not going to
lesson
say
with
he
it, right?
plays great,
30
but I think
minutes in,
because deep in
spot
tournaments with
where I lead,
ICM, he
jam,
just knows a lot about those
fold.
spots.
You can't have anything there. Your
You know,
range
he
is
makes a lot of
capped.
good
I'm
mixed
like,
game
you've been
plays.
playing for 15 minutes. First of all, you're wrong, but thanks for the lesson. He was teaching me. It took him 15 minutes to be a master of the game. And I think he like
impressive.
he made the final table or he won or
You
something.
got second.
Yeah.
I think John won.
Yeah.
Negreanu telling a story about
You can't have
Sean
any-
Perry
'cause
there.
I called
Where
No
him
I
shortage
was
of those
one,
floating around
and then I
Vegas.
Where I was going with that is Negreanu. So Negreanu is a person who, I mean, he actually does play mixed games quite well, but he also has a ton of tournament experience. And I find that in a lot of mixed game tournaments, he really kind of knows how to navigate the later ICM streets. So, you know, like for example, that deuce to 7 decision, he's not always just jamming just because he has a 1-card 7 draw, even though sometimes he would. But definitely with the chip lead and the ICM pressure, he's going to play it that way in that spot, for example.
Gostisa with the lovely deuce 3-7, no help with it. And how often do we see the draw 2 in No Limit Deuce, Rast?
You're going to see it. Here's the thing: the ante is actually 1.5 big blinds, so there's a total of 3 big blinds out there to attack. So you will see a decent amount. And you know, some people actually would have raised the deuce 3-7 from that spot, although maybe not with the ICM situation and Negreanu in the blinds. But it wouldn't have been unreasonable. And I even think like deuce 3-7 with a blocker,
I had a
you
feeling
would
that was
see a
gonna
raise.
And
Couldn't
you see
help
Negreanu
myself.
just getting
Hand
after
caught in the cookie
Wiseman,
jar.
who
We take those.
I did
moved
not have a
all
good
in.
hand.
Could have drawn 1 to
If
the
you're
jack
watching this
7
at
or
home,
2.
Don't
Yeah.
open with that hand. Not good.
missing a coward.
Not much opportunity. Just let it go. Unless you're chip leader and you're forced. That's it.
I had a deuce
That
and
was-
7 in my hand.
I had a 3 and a 3-3-4, and the rest are.
I will say that
really
was
worth
kind
discussing.
of an interesting hand.
I had a pair of jacks also.
I had a jack. I was just debating to draw to the 3-4 jack or the 3-4.
I had it earlier. I still don't know what it is.
Yeah.
This game can be
Well, we
quite
would've been drawing to the
interesting
same
because in tournament situations, because you
I
get some
do
spots where when you move all in
blind
there
twice
for
this game.
20, 25 blinds,
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't see the table.
you know, a lot of the time your opponent might fold a lot, so you're incentivized to do it. But then if
do you say
you know
thank you
people
in
know
Japanese?
you're doing that, then you start getting
Arigato.
called
Arigato.
wider.
Arigato.
But like, can
Arigato.
someone really do it for
Arigato.
ICM? I mean, Negreanu is a person that
I
can.
thought somebody told me.
You know, a
thank
lot
you
of
is
people would
fucking
probably
out.
choose to flat Wiseman's hand and draw 2 to the
Not
deuce
true?
3-7. But you know, Wiseman took a different route, and you know,
Okay.
obviously
They
it
lied.
worked out well.
They lied to me.
Yeah,
They told
yeah,
me
yeah.
thank you is.
Yes, but it's sometimes we are joking back at all.
Yeah.
Wiseman with 590K is the short stack now, has 29 bigs.
So yeah, even though this is a gutter, you know, I like his open here. You know, this is only 5-handed. It's relatively short, and you know, you have a 1-card draw. Obviously, a deuce gives you the best hand possible, but you you know, I think this is an open.
$70,000 to go as Negreanu mulls over the deuce 3-4 jack.
Professional.
Flushes and straights do count against you.
You're not gonna draw too?
Yeah.
See? Professional.
So to the
I
3.5x
had a
open,
2-card draw.
Negreanu
Oh,
doesn't
really good
call to
draws.
draw
I had
two,
deuce
but
before
maybe to a
diamonds.
much smaller open sizing you would
That's
have.
good. You're welcome.
I let you live.
You
I didn't want to make the flush.
I'm pretty sure I win that one.
Yeah, how do you know?
Now that ensemble
You
there
saw
on
my brand
Gostisa may
twice?
look familiar, and it has everything to do with the fact that he is one of Ali
I
Imshirovich's
remember.
closest friends in poker. So
I'm not
taking
gonna draw
six
those
there and
two.
one
a piece out of
Yeah,
Ali's wardrobe,
but I would have to,
perhaps.
yeah.
As we give you a look at the average stack of
So
1.3 million, 65
Yeah,
average
yeah,
bigs,
yeah.
5 of our 6 originals still left here in event number 4. of
To
the
take that hand a
2022
little
US
to the
Poker Open.
The
streets.
sunglasses help with the
So
lights,
one of the
but
things
way
Negreanu is
hard
going to be
see the
thinking
actual
about is
block.
whether to 3-bet. But I actually don't like
wear the
picking that
sunglasses.
hand to
These lights are
3-bet
Yeah, no,
because when
I
you have
played
2
the other
jacks,
day
you're
and I was
blocking
back.
pat
I just got
jacks,
eye
which will
surgery.
fold.
Oh, right.
I would
had
much
the,
prefer if
LASIK
Negreanu
monovision.
decided to
Oh, nice.
3-bet, doing
So
like
LASIK,
deuce
which
3
is
4
great.
10 10.
I mean,
Yeah.
I see with one eye
And so
reading,
now
one eye
he's kind of
distance.
blocking
That's
pat
really neat.
tens, which
So,
probably
but
don't
the
fold.
lights
He gets
straight
pat
in your
jacks
eye.
to fold, and in position you can draw 1 to the deuce 3 4 10 and just
No,
check
no
back a
bueno.
lot
Those lights
if you
are
make
intense.
it. So, you know, with the idea that you're going to take it down a bit pre-flop, right? So I think Negreanu passed that because he might have been thinking 3-bet instead of not, but I do like not 3-betting the
Still
deuce 3
deuce
4
seven,
jack jack. Anyway, there's a little, you know, getting into the
I
weeds.
know. I was
with
like,
that.
wait a minute. I forgot. Do I have that many? Yeah.
And Negreanu opening with a draw 2 to the 8-tray deuce. Wiseman with that gut shot if needed, but the 10-8 pat is always going to feel good about his prospects.
This is a pretty easy all-in for
That
his
sounds
stack.
about right.
Okay,
Against the chip leader.
professional. Professional mean fold.
And Daniel
Or
Bucks
draw
acquired
3.
once more by the
You draw, I would have taken you drawing 2.
30-year-old
Get an element hold'em.
mental game and PLO coach at
Legit.
Upswing Poker. A new season of high-stakes poker is available now exclusively on PokerGO. Watch Legends of the Game, battle in poker's most iconic cash streets. New episode every Monday through May 23rd. Subscribe now and use the code USPO22 to get yourself a new annual subscription for less than $7 a month. And the 6-time bracelet winner has this commanding chip lead here.
Back to 2-card.
Yes, no limit hold'em time. Ace-5, 5-handed, under the gun, deeming it adequate for the 50K open. And this is going to start to get a little annoying as Wiseman has taken a couple of pots from him pre-flop in the no limit deuce round. And here is mulling over how to proceed with the 2 6s.
All in?
Yeah, he is chipped up now to 35 blinds, so it's not quite so obvious, but you know, he's gonna keep pushing it. He is the shortest stack, and he does figure Negreanu is opening somewhat wide, which is true with ace-5 off and hijack, slightly wide.
The all-in making the
Just say
decision
now
for
we have to
Nakamura quite a
Now
bit
I have too many
easier.
chips, though.
Yes.
King-queen suited.
Now I can't just say all in.
That would have been
Best card in the deck too.
I think Weisman decision is a little
Highest
bit more,
possible card.
you know,
Ace
he's
of
not
spades.
flatting.
Wow,
If he
that
plays
is
it, he
highest
goes all in, and I like his decision. What Nakamura would do there with
My other one wasn't that hot.
50 blinds and the king-queen suited would have been interesting. Does he
Sure.
flat or 3-bet? I would guess he's probably flatting, but you never know. Could 3-bet it.
A little bit more off of the Wiseman resume, showing the financial math and statistics background he has. Something tells me that's useful
thought that was
when it
fun.
comes to
Making a
playing
living
poker.
Just jamming in my face.
Here you go. Can't do it
That's
this.
3. Strike 4 coming.
I had good hands every time.
I believe you.
I like legit did.
I didn't.
Yeah, I had good hands every time. I don't know what a good hand in no limit deuce is. I think it was a good hand.
Yeah. Sounds like you said you had a deuce 3-7 and a jack.
First look
did.
at some participation from the legendary Stephen Chidwick, one of the winningest players all time, 8-6 offsuit.
Has Negreanu dominated here, but this is not a flop where that matters. What matters for this one is probably who's gonna bluff first.
Fairly raggy queen-9 deuce, no suits. And
Chidwick's gonna win.
yeah, Bet and take it, sir. Man originally from Deal, Kent, 32 years of age. 38 million plus by way of 237 cashes for Stephen Chidwick.
I just enjoyed the mixed event. It was fun.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Really has
I haven't played horse
earned a
since I was,
tremendous
like,
amount of
19,
respect
but
from his peers.
I played a couple of the games
Oftentimes
in Clash
referred
last
to
year,
as the
2
most
years ago, but I haven't played Stud, for
difficult
example,
opponent
ever.
to have at any given table.
I hear they
These
have
high
PLO in
roller
that tournament,
streets.
There is, yeah.
Yeah.
PLO, no limit hold'em.
So I'm fiending. That's enough for me.
Yeah, you're like, as long as you get 6 out of 80 hands. You know, the old days, in the limit players during PLO, they just left the table.
Oh, really?
They're just like, I'm not fair. You go ahead, take the blinds. We don't want to mess with it.
It's probably not a bad strategy.
It isn't if you're really good at limit.
Yeah, it's not a bad strategy.
Ace Jack suited. Nakamura's first open. And a nice suited connector for Wiseman, who is deep enough out of the big blind, I would imagine, to defend and see what happens, which he does.
I don't know how it made the final table, honestly.
And the flop, ace, 9, deuce, top pair for Tamon.
Yeah, we'll see what happens if he checks this back or bets really small. I think once you start sizing over a third pot or more, it's going to be too much. But to really small sizings or a check, with the backdoor flush draw and 3 to a straight, you know, Wiseman could either float or raise. I would think you would do that at least some of the time. But yeah, no, to a larger sizing like that, it's a fold.
90,000 was the bet as we get a look at that final table layout brought to you by Global Poker, free poker at its best. John Reirden. The only name in red, that's because he's no longer with us, finishing in 6th place.
No back-to-back.
It bears mentioning, Brian, but the final tables in these PokerGO Tour events, like the US Poker Open, are often nightmare fuel. And when you look out at a lineup like this, truly there's
All in?
All in.
not a lot of soft spots, not a lot of Achilles out there.
No. No, a solid final table. Oh, wow.
2 black 5s for Wiseman, the all-in from the small blind, leaving Nakamura with a bit of a decision. This is a big pot to be played with ace-jack offsuit.
Wow.
And he's left to determine exactly what Dylan's range is in this situation.
It's a big shove here. I mean, we're talking 37 blinds, so a pretty tough ICM spot for Nakamura here, which, yeah.
And he's part of that cluster of Gostisa, Chidwick, and himself, roughly at around $1 million.
Wow.
Granted, he's the best of the 3.
A call.
Oh, and he's going to make this big call here. Does have Weisman covered. And it's going to be close, a slight edge in equity, favoring Wiseman in this very meaningful pot.
He's still got 425K after calling, you know? So it's kind of one of those ugly spots, though.
And it got a little uglier there on the 8-7-6 board, where 5s jump out to a 3-to-1 advantage.
Yeah, great flop for 5s.
A little extra something.
I'd take
You can just basically shut it down with a few cards almost.
Ooh.
Oh, the jack on the turn, a devastating flip in favor of Nakamura now, as Wiseman is left hunting a 9, 4, or a 5 for his tournament life. And instead, it is a king. And just like that, Dylan Wiseman joins the departed. He'll collect $42,400 for the effort. And the good news is there's always another event that you can just pony up and buy into.
I mean, what do I know? I don't study that shit. I don't know.
He's
But it
asking.
seems totally good to me.
I had 35 bigs.
35?
35.
I wouldn't do that.
It's too big. Yeah.
Yeah, my feeling is you
Hey, gamble, bro.
don't really
Gamble,
open
why not?
jam once you get to 35 bigs.
like, I wouldn't do
I don't think too many GTO solutions are
35 is a
doing
lot.
that too often,
Yeah,
but
no gamble, no future.
you do put
right,
your
no gamble,
opponents
no
in tough
future.
spots
That's
when
why
you do
I
it.
called.
I appreciate the vulnerability of
Yeah.
Wiseman there.
Only no
Oftentimes
pair
there's so
call.
much ego out there in the high limit, high roller circuits. For him to just stop, take a moment, turn around, realize that he has a lot of brain power that can really just give him the answer there. He's like, was that too rich? And I think it was Chidwick who advised he wouldn't have done that with the 2-5.
Yeah.
You
So
guys have big stats.
we live and we learn.
Yeah, I haven't seen too many push fold charts that go all the way to 35 bigs, even in the small blind, which is where you go to the most big blinds when you're open jamming. But like I said, I mean, it's one of those things where you put people in uncomfortable spots. Like you get ace jack off to like take a time bank, right? Which is a pretty damn good hand for that situation. And I mean, to be fair, he was a 54% favorite, even
180.
could have won.
Yeah, the edge was slight pre. It got a lot bigger on the flop, and then a really bad turn left him in need of some help, which he didn't get. Nakamura's got his rally cap on as his ace-king 3-bets over the top of the Chidwick Open.
I think an underappreciated thing also about some of that is, okay, so maybe a game theory chart wouldn't do that. That said, if you make plays like this and your opponents make bad decisions versus plays that are a bit off the tree, it can also work out sometimes to your favor. So there's that aspect too, going off branch. Not saying that happened in that particular situation, but that's another thing to consider, is that if you make kind of weird, goofy, non-GTO plays, but it makes your opponents play bad, then even though it wouldn't be recommended by a solver, it could still be a good play.
And feeling a little frisky, Tamon opens to 45,000 with the Queen 4 suited on the button. Fairly standard, but obviously not quite the ace-king of a hand ago. 7-8 off for Chidwick, and he will defend for the extra 25K. To the flop we go with 120,000 in the middle. Wow. Queen 9 deuce. Top pair.
So again, Nakamura, he actually has a pretty decent hand here to mix checkbacks. Queen with the backdoor flush on a bad kicker. So yeah, I kind of like this because his kicker is so bad.
Oh, and now Chidwick picks up an open-ender on the turn, courtesy of that check back. So
I think Chidwick's going to bet here a lot, and he might even choose a big sizing. There's a very good chance this won't work out for Nakamura. I mean, won't work out for him, since Nakamura is basically slow playing top pair and probably shouldn't fold to almost any run out here. Yeah, he's going big, which makes a lot of sense. 180. So in my opinion, Nakamura should be pretty happy with this. This is a draw-heavy board, and he checked back top pair. It's pretty much at the top of his range, and even though there's going to be some times he's just going to get shown, 2 pairs, something that draws out of him on the river, I'm pretty sure you just call here and call almost any river, frankly.
Obviously, Nakamura's hand is heavily under-repped with that check back. But he understands the situation that's been created by virtue of the line that he has taken, and therefore he makes the call, which was a 50K overbet to full pot, and the river looks fairly safe as Nakamura is blocking the 4-5.
Chidwick might give up on this river. I would expect him to continue on basically any club that didn't make his straight, right? Especially given that he has the 8 of clubs in his hand. That's like 100% bluff follow through in my opinion. But this total blank, he's we'll see what he chooses, but it's a spot where, yeah, okay, he gives up.
That call from Nakamura on the turn just really suggests strength, and Chidwick deeming it unwise to pursue this pot any further, and Tamon able to check back and take down a very nice pot. And you see the power of the check back there in a pot that would have been considerably smaller had Nakamura taken the very straightforward line and c-bet it. Allows Chidwick to pick up a lot of equity. Granted, there is some danger there, but earns himself an extra 180,000 that he wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, I I think the hand was played pretty well by all parties. I like it.
Well, it was a memorable debut for Stephen Chidwick back in 2018 at the U.S. Poker Open when he managed to notch not one but 2 victories, 4 total podium finishes, and a little bit of a 5th place icing on the cake in that 10K no limit hold'em. He is no stranger to this series, and for that matter to most of the opposition that he faces out here.
He's a beast. He plays great. And he's one of those guys who basically every time I've played with him, it seems like he's just always playing his A game, you know?
And it's so strange because it feels almost like he's not mortal in that respect, because to execute at the highest level consistently, time in and time out, under all sorts of circumstances, there's so many variables that go into being able to pull that off, and it just seems like he's got them all in a row each and every time he shows up to play.
Yeah, I think you know, there's a few things that it takes. I mean, one of them is a definite like love for the game. Like you have to like what you're doing to show up and focus, concentrate for hours. But then also a presence of mind and willingness to kind of be in the moment, right? I think, you know, not be distracted. So you know, he's captured a lot of that, and it allows him, I think, to, you know, I have a different sort of, people talk about on A game. I mean, to me, A game is, I'm a bit more strict with that consideration than I think a lot of people. I mean, A game is not just showing up and not being tilted and kind of like playing your hands. It's being focused and trying to make the best play all the time and a deep level of concentration, which I think actually most people are not on their A game most of the time. But, you know, Chidwick is one of the few people that kind of is.
Limped in with this A7 suited against the chip leader, check calling 20,000 on the queen 4 deuce board as Negreanu has outflopped him. Now has queens and 4s with a good kicker, facing a second check from Chidwick. Negreanu trying to decide how to proceed. And half pot is the answer.
Yeah, I mean, the queen's a good card for Daniel, basically. I mean, other than directly improving his hand with a king or a 4, this is probably the best card because it makes it less likely that your opponent has a queen, which was already beating you. I mean, that said, if they did have a queen, you know, now they can't beat you, can't beat them, but the first part of that equation is more important, that they're less likely to have a queen.
And Chidwick does give up as Negreanu falls in a pot. Began the afternoon with 2.45 million, has since moved north to 2.685. Chidwick, however, started with over $1 million and is now down to 680.
Yeah, what happened on the flop there? Was there a bet? Did Chidwick bet?
Check called.
Check. Oh, he check called and then check folded. Yeah, you know, solid fold by Chidwick on the turn. I think there are some people who would consider being sticky there, although, you know, not always. It's not a spot you're forced to call for sure, but, you know, decent laydown. Okay, let's see if he plays this hand. It's interesting. He's a little shorter on chips, but it's, you know, 10s with a solid flush draw along with it. Okay, folds. Definitely okay with that for ICM considerations. And if you knew Chidwick had a 10, would definitely fold it. Now does Chidwick play? And how does he play it? Does he limp?
No, he's going to raise it here in the first hand of Pot Limit Omaha in this 3-game big bet mix. Nakamura in the big, King 9-4 tray. Far from sexy, and into the muck it goes. A warm welcome to all of you who are joining us on the PokerGO YouTube channel, monitoring the chat out here. Quite a few of you eager to see how this one plays out. And a reminder that today's coverage is brought to you in part by Storm X. You were saying, right?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut
not
you
at all.
off. I thought you, anyways. Something to take into consideration there, which probably also affected this last hand, that maybe our viewers don't realize, is the PLO is now being played with a big blind ante of 1 big blind, which it hadn't been for many, many years until recently. And like, this is a hand that I think with ICM, Chidwick probably would have folded the button there, but with the extra incentive to play, you know, ends up raising. And so it's now created a very different PLO spots, especially in these shorthanded ones, where there's an actual incentive to play hands, whereas I think before PLO was a game, especially with ICM, where people were very incentivized to play very tight. Because you get raised, you get 3-bet, you couldn't call, a lot of like weird kind of goofy ICM spots. But now with that big blind ante, there's a lot more incentive to play and try to take the blinds. So I think it's actually much better for the game in tournament settings, to be quite frank, as a person who enjoys playing 4-card games quite a bit.
Creates some interesting spots, and Chidwick here has himself a pretty good spot with King, King, 7, 6 against Negreanu, who has flatted the button with Queen, Jack, Jack 4. Of course, Daniel will have the benefit of position, moving forward heads up in 150K pot.
Oh, wow. Did he not? He didn't defend the big blind there for a min raise with the double suited hand.
That being Gostisa. And King, Queen, Trey, top set for Chidwick.
It's going to be hard for him to get too much action here. The problem with, even though he has second pair, is that jacks actually make this hand a lot weaker. So Chidwick's actually going to do the best if he checks his hand, which he might do because top set with no flush draw. So this is actually how Negreanu gets into trouble, although that's not one of the cards that gets him into trouble. But actually one of the cards that, for example, might get him into trouble would have been like a 9, and all of a sudden now a 9 or a 10, and now he turns his hand into a little bit of a bluff with the jack blockers. But, you know, just an 8 here. Chidwick probably will bet now, and I think Negreanu's going to end up folding.
How much trouble would a diamond create for him?
Oh, yeah. Well, now you're calling, you know, now you're calling because of the diamond flush draw equity. So, but, you know, now you can actually win.
Right, right.
Unlike the jack blocker where you bluff the straight and you just, you know, top set's like, okay, whatever, I call.
No.
Well, that was the last hand of the level, and that gives us an opportunity to check in on the chip counts. Brought to you by Global Poker. Free poker at its best. Rok Gostisa and Stephen Chidwick, sub 1 million. And then you got the 2 million chip club in Negreanu and Nakamura.
Yeah, but very much a tale of two cities right now. We got the rich and the poor.
But to be fair, it's not dire straits for the poor.
Oh,
They're going to make rent with stacks this deep.
Yes, for sure. But you know, I mean, there's clumping.
Yeah,
simply clumping. Yep. And their averages are pretty close to 3x apart from each other. That's a solid hand to play in the cutoff.
Queen, Jack, 10-10 with 3 diamonds.
So Negreanu going for max sizing.
And what is some of the nuance in terms of, oftentimes we hear keep your sizings consistent. You don't want to necessarily skew one direction or the other or allow people to glean information about your range based on your open sizing. But here we see him going to max.
Yeah.
Why not? You know, what's the argument in favor of actually having some variance in terms of your opens versus
really
keeping it consistent in PLO?
Around the area. They're cold.
They're really cold.
But
There's not bad.
Yeah.
You know, I think that, well, the number one thing you don't want is people to get some kind of reads on you based on your sizing, as you said. But outside of that, you know, one thing that's nice about a big sizing is, you know, it drastically, especially against somebody who's as short as Chidwick, it really increases your chance of just winning that pot, winning those 2.5 big blinds with no contest, like a lot. You know, Chidwick, especially, probably more than the other people at this table, is going to defend wide for the min sizing.
Yeah, he's sticky.
So, you know, correctly, because you're getting such a good price pre-flop.
Would have called.
So, you know, I think to that aspect, it's quite nice, right? You know, you just don't want to be doing it in a situation where you say too much about your hand. But, you know, I think Negreanu's probably going to have
I wasn't going to see the flop for 10K.
some kind of thing worked out in his head that especially, you know, people, you know, aren't going to be able to tell, right? Having not played very much PLO with each other, I'm guessing. I mean, most of these guys have probably played way more like no-limit tournaments hands with each other than PLO.
And it would be important to be balanced if you are going to have some fluctuation in terms of your open sizing to where it's not always top tier when you're going
Yeah, or
heavy.
just, I think the more important thing in a certain sense is like what you do versus 3-bets in that particular case. Just if you were going to say like top tier versus bottom tier, it's like, no, I'm doing this sizing with where are my aces or hands that I'm not folding to 3-bets essentially, whether I'm min or big sizing, right? Because like that's kind of the most important aspect to me of like, you know, what happens versus say like, let's say you're 2 sizes or you had limp, min, or like pot.
Two kings into the muck for Gostisa, and the other 2 show up for Chidwick on the button, and he opens to 65,000.
Wow, he's not getting it through this hand.
No way. Double suited with 3 Broadway cards and some nice reach for Nakamura out of the big. And is this enough hand for him to play back at a button open?
I would, yeah. I like this play, and I wonder what Chidwick does here. With the 2 kings being gone, he's got to be actually maybe even as low as 40% versus this hand with no kings in the deck.
10 more, yeah.
Of course, Chidwick not aware that Gostisa fold the other 2 kings, but
his hand is kind of so rough that with the ICM considerations here, I definitely think he might find a fold. It's not a great spot.
And the aces do loom.
Yeah, he's got to figure that even if Nakamura doesn't have aces, he probably has a hand like he does, which he's not doing well against. So, you know, the 8-3, king 8-3, kind of taking away the flush draw, which is nice, but is so wildly disconnected that really, even just flatting here, all he's really hoping for, yeah, okay. I don't blame him for flatting. If you do play, this is what you do. You're essentially hoping for a flop where you can either pick up hearts or you can just go with your kings. That's what he's going to be looking for.
Now, the lack of kings available in the deck means Nakamura is never going to pick up some of that Broadway wrap business that, if you're not going to connect in terms of pairs, you would love to see with this sort of holding. He does, however, make top pair, top kicker, and an open ender. Chidwick still just kings.
And again, this is another flop that's going to put him in a really tough spot. He's going to be getting just a little worse than 2-1, so he probably needs about the 35% equity or something to continue. But it's got to think like basically with no draws, he's behind aces, and even hands without aces that continue, he might not be doing too good with both the clubs and the Jack-9 connectivity. So, like, again, another really tough spot, and I'm interested to see what he comes up with.
10 seconds.
Like with ICM, if he could see the hand, like money-wise, he would actually be getting chip EV-wise the odds to call at 37%, but it's possible that with ICM considerations, he should still fold. I'm not entirely sure. But
he does use a time bank.
He doesn't know what hand he's up against.
10 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like it. I kind of like this.
Scared me. Go all in.
It's easy to
Probably
go
call.
all in. Yeah, for me.
You call. You
Yeah,
go all
of
in.
course.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
even
I
notice
have.
that. He only bet 250?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I
You
actually
hear Chidwick say it scared him.
Yeah, I really don't like that size. I don't think there's ever a bet fold size there, so that makes no sense to me. With all that money in the pot, you pretty much just pot. And even if you had a hand, let's say his hand is like ace, king, queen, 10, or ace, there's almost no way that he doesn't have a hand that can't pot go all in there. So I think his only size should be pot all in. And I actually don't like what he decided. And I hadn't even noticed that he didn't bet the pot. I was sort of mentally assuming it was just he just potted. But, yeah.
But you heard Chidwick say it scared him because he is of the same mindset you are, that this is just a natural pot follow through on that texture. And when he didn't do that, perhaps Chidwick thought he had almost too much hand to do anything other than try to entice Stephen to commit.
Yeah,
more
maybe he
chips.
assumed that some of the weaker parts of his range that he would be doing better against, like the ace, king, queen, jack, the ace, king, queen, 10, or whatever, where he's like, okay, my kings are actually like well over 40% equity. You know, he doesn't have those hands now. Now he's got like aces with a flush draw or you know, some kind of hand like two pair, just something that really hit that hand flop hard.
Right. 65K the open out of Chidwick's Ace-King 8-7 with hearts. Negreanu flats the double-suited 4-card, 1-gap rundown.
Yeah, and I expect a flat here from Nakamura as well. No, I feel like no reason to 3-bet this. Yeah. Wow, very tight fold out of the big blind, I think, is the...
Well, I mean, obviously there are some considerations for Gostisa in terms of looking to wait out Chidwick. Third place money, 74,200. Fourth place, 53,000. So about 20,000 in pay jump.
Yeah,
meanwhile, I mean, 5-5-4, leaving Negreanu with trips on this board, but
I feel like Gostisa's not comfortable in PLO and has decided he's just going to play too tight in these big blind spots. I think this is the second time now where he's folded. You know, the other time was actually a more clear call than this one. This one with the ace, queen, jack, not suited to the ace in a 4-way pot. I kind of get it. It's an uncomfortable hand to play even though you're getting great odds. But the other one that he folded, I think, last time in his big blind was, to me, a clear call.
And he open folded a hand to go the 2 kings in front of Chidwick. So
I think he's just decided, I'm not going to play a lot of hands in PLO. So, you know, which is fine. And there is Chidwick having low chips ICM, you know, let me stay out of this pot, so.
And Chidwick c-betting here 60,000, which certainly isn't going to get through Negreanu, who makes the call, has the open ender for dessert.
No, he raised it, I think.
Oh, forgive me. I thought he was smoothing there.
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of people would have chosen to smooth in Negreanu's spot here with a hand.
A lot of hand.
Here's the thing about his hand. He's really, like, he has wraps in big trouble, right? I mean, it's very hard for a wrap to beat him. I would almost be like, a lot of the cards that a wrap has either makes a straight also, or he makes a boat when they make a straight.
Right.
You know, because of that and not, I actually kind of really like calling his hand.
I mean, I presumed that that's what he was going to do, obviously, and the thought being...
That way, if Nakamura happened to have the 6-7-8 or the 6-7 something in his hand...
They both have good hands, and then Negreanu.
Chidwick's going to call the extra 80,000 here with the gut shot. Obviously drawn dead to that 6, which would fill Negreanu up.
Oh, wow.
10 of hearts on the turn. Now Chidwick picks up the nut flush draw and paths to victory.
So, I mean, Chidwick with well under a pot size bet here. I feel like because of that, yeah, we'll see what Negreanu does. I mean, I would think he's not going to play too tricky and check back, but maybe he does.
Pot.
Yeah, okay. It's actually quite a tough card for Chidwick because I think he's going to fold to this most. I think the reason why you call the flop as him is you're hoping to pick up some pots where Negreanu checks back and was bluffing, or you improve yourself. But now it's kind of the uncomfortable spot where Negreanu continues, but you picked up one of your better cards. But yeah, still.
On a paired board, obviously, it's a little pesky as well because you do have to wonder whether or not you're good if you get there with a heart or a 6 in case you happen to be up against a boat.
I feel like Chidwick's float there, especially given his stack size, was quite light, out of position, with only a gutter.
Notable bust outs from earlier in this event include Jeremy Osmus, who won the 50K PLO. He was at that final table with Helmuth and Negreanu three-handed, battling out. Alex Livingston in 7th on the official final table bubble.
Maybe for some reason he felt like Negreanu was going to be extra likely to not have a 5 for whatever reason. They've been playing together, the sizing, whatever it is. But, you know, obviously that wasn't the case because he did have a 5. But,
and the thing is that those are the kinds of cards that can be danglers.
You said it.
No way.
When
No
I have
hand.
position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get button, I don't play.
You're right.
Unless you forget, like
Yeah.
yesterday.
Yeah, I forgot. That was bad. Honest mistake.
Yeah. When you have
Gostisa passing
never fall.
another hand, very reasonable in the small blind to a button open, but showing yet again that he's gonna stay out of the way and PLO. And now, yeah, Chidwick gonna defend this with his equity. I would guess he's probably about 50-50 yet. Small dog versus those overcards.
Ace-4 tray rainbow.
Nobody has really anything here. Chidwick actually flops a better hand here with the 8s and hitting the 4 and the backdoor spades, but you know, versus a c-bet, it's very uncomfortable given given his stack size. You know, actually, it's interesting Nakamura went with such a, yeah, okay. He
If I would have opened, I would play with this flop.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Whoa.
all the money.
So scared.
Yeah.
It's kind of a spot where Chidwick is very handcuffed by the amount of chips he has. He actually, maybe he would continue there or not
40,
if they were
yeah?
a little deeper to that small of a sizing, but not with only 260. It actually kind of becomes one of the reasons at some point why I think as you get really short in PLO, it becomes weird how much you defend or not. You know, if you have ICM considerations. I sometimes give up big blinds in like weird short stack situations. Not too often, and maybe not as much as some other people, but.
Well, obviously it depends on whether or not anybody is within range of your short stack, and you could maybe snug your way into a little ladder, but.
I feel like Chidwick, it doesn't have too much ICM here, being so much shorter than the next, but.
Gear shift now to no limit deuce to 7 single draw once more. Gostisa on the button, 9-8-4-4. Not going to open. Chidwick with 10-8-8-3. Oh.
Yeah, 10 blinds, and Negreanu's going to call with this.
How much?
Well, it'll be interesting to me as Negreanu does ask for a count and presumably will make this call.
Yeah, I think he definitely should call with this at 10 blinds. Chidwick should have some draw 2s here, and he has, you know, he's ahead of draw 2s. He can always decide to draw 1 in position to the jack.
To the jack,
as well,
yeah.
Depending on how many Chidwick draws.
And position is a huge advantage in this particular game.
But
all forms of poker, really, but this one, knowing how many your opponent is going to draw makes a big difference. Oh.
Oh, wow. I think that fold is too tight, actually. Not just because I can see Chidwick's cards, and actually Negreanu had the best hand, but that's actually one of the things about this game, because it's played so rarely in tournament situations. Actually, a lot of people play way too tight for these like sub 20 blind spots. But yeah, blind versus blind against somebody like Chidwick, who kind of knows what's up, you just kind of have to defend 10 blind, especially having all the chips. Just like, I feel like you're forced, even though it's not like great, but it's just one of those things where I bet if you went back like 20 years ago and asked like, you know, ask people, oh hey, like, you know, do you defend ace 9 off, or like, you know, king 10 off versus those shoves? You know, maybe people didn't, but like nowadays it's like kind of snap, sort of. And I feel like that's one of those spots, and you know, maybe as Negreanu you could find a fold against parts of the population that are just not shoving correctly in Chidwick's spot. But you know, my personal opinion is Chidwick isn't one of those guys who's, yeah, as you can see, he shoved the 3, 8, 8, 10 queen.
And by the way, his decision to do so yielded a pot and an orbit's worth of tokens, which are so precious to him.
Yes, because as I said earlier, you know, the blind is extra, the ante's extra big in this game. It's 1.5, so it's actually 3 blinds out there. So, you know, you are incentivized as a shorter stack in the small blind to get after it.
Position. No, yeah.
Nakamura getting a walk there and getting a lot of love from Negreanu, who just about 15 hours ago tweeted, "The Japanese poker players who have joined us for the U.S. Poker Open in PokerGO studio have been a breath of fresh air. So happy and always having a blast. I love these guys. And I got to tell you from my own personal experience playing with the crew that have made their way over prior to COVID. Obviously, it's been one of the countries that have been ferociously locked down for the better part of the last 2 years. Also had the pleasure of playing with and experiencing their energy, and Tamon really was a really nice addition to our game for several weeks.
Oh, yeah,
and here we see Chidwick moving all in for 325. The Pat Jack convertible if needed.
Oh, wow.
Oh, and a Pat 10 for Nakamura. This is disaster.
Yes, but the good news for Chidwick is he won't have a tough decision, in my opinion, because what's going to happen is Nakamura's going to stay pat, and Chidwick's going to break the jack correctly in this case. I think versus a pat, you just can't keep the jack here with a 9 draw. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, how much Jack 10 or even less likely worse Jack 9 is Nakamura ever going to move all in and pat with in front of you? Virtually none. So therefore, the decision made easy for Chidwick, and he needs a little help. No. And instead pairs his top card. And just like that, a little cooler for Stephen Chidwick.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
So now we're going to see like that hand where I kind of just criticized Negreanu. You know, actually, it's very possible, given the way we've seen, you know, at least Gostisa play so far. You know, I don't know how familiar he is with no limit single draw, but if he plays like he does in PLO, like that fold is probably very good against Gostisa. And so now in this three-handed, you know, maybe some of those kind of like tighter spots in the ground are going to be more correct.
Stevie will take home $53,000 for that fourth place finish, and now the payouts will slip up to $74,000 and change. The podium is secured for all three of these players, but the order still TBD.
And the interesting spot from a more strategic perspective right now is we kind of have two guys who have a lot of chips, and then one guy who's like clearly in third place. So, you know, the interesting thing to watch now for you viewers at home is kind of what is the interplay between the two big stacks, right? Because from the perspective of the short guy, it's very simple. He doesn't really have ICM pressure at this point. It's kind of like, I need to win chips, right? You're 3.5x behind the two guys in front of you. You just play to win chips. But between the other two guys who have almost 3 million here, you know, there's a lot of interesting things that can happen. You know, if they kind of go at each other, it creates like weird spots where it is kind of a disaster if one of them busts the other guy, and you know, you have 3x the short stack, but you go out third a little bit from an ICM perspective. So it can, depending on how these guys play it and how aggressive they are, it can create some pretty interesting strategic dynamics.
No.
No.
Okay.
I will say that my guess is, for the viewers at home, my guess is that we don't see total animal spots, just given I know the way Negreanu generally treats these spots, and my guess about Nakamura is they're not going to do some real crazy stuff, but you never know.
Note that Tamon was willing to pat the queen jack behind the
I could have drawn a jack.
Draw 2.
If I knew you had that, I still lose. Ace first card.
Which is correct. A pat queen is a favorite against the draw 2, and you also can't really break his hand anyway. I mean, the thing about the queen jack 10 9 7 is that even if your opponent's drawing one, you're still patting it.
Pretty straightforward there. What are you going to draw to the jack 10? No way.
The jack 10 9 7. You throw the jack away and draw the queen 10. Yeah, it's pat or fold.
No doubt. Fairly uneventful pot, and Gostisa really has sort of been lurking here and would love to make a move northbound, try to narrow the gap between himself and the runaway stacks of Nakamura and Negreanu. Note that Nakamura is the chip leader now, over 3 million after that pot with Daniel.
He's in the colorful hoodie crew.
Yeah, the Mshirovich.
Yeah.
Dragon Ball Z flavor.
So now let's see if he opens up, because he just was exploring the power of folding in ICM, and he laddered up as Chidwick, was getting after it and basically having things not work out. But, you know, now that he's clearly the shortest, he should start playing some hands that he had been passing recently, in my opinion. But and he's kind of doing that right now with the one card jack draw on the button. But, you know, he ran into a pretty good draw here by Negreanu, who looks at Gostisia's stack and says, I will play for, you know, your 30 big blind stack with my one card 8 draw.
Yeah.
3-betting the
Should have
8-6-4
known when you did
tray.
that, I should have just.
Oh, I didn't even look.
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
I was like, oh no.
No, that's not good.
Yeah.
To me, this is one of those interesting it's always funny when you're
I had an all-in
you're that
kind of
guy.
hand.
You've been playing tight. You've actually been passing up a lot of hands, and then the first time you kind of open a little loose. You
Yeah.
just get 3-bet.
You get pummeled. It's
Yeah,
back in
you're
your
like,
hole.
You
Like,
opened
what
jams,
is
I would've
going
called.
on?
We
Like,
didn't
you
tell
know,
you you could get out of your hole.
Well, will he
that
do it,
good?
or will he just say, hey, you know, Negreanu had a hand, which is what was pretty much the case.
Top 3 slots in the U.S. Poker Open standings belong to the champions of events 1 through 3. Shore winning event 1, Hendricks event 3, Young event number 2, and Jonathan Little sliding into 4th place there. Remember that the overall points champion in the series does pick up an extra $50,000 in overlay. Nakamura with the Queen Jack 10 trade deuce.
Whew, so cold.
Targeting Gostisa.
95.
And really
This is a terrible.
doesn't take a bunch of no-limit deuce under your belt to know that that's a dust bunny. As Gostisa folds, and Tamon hauls one in. Nakamura career live tournament earnings of
Cold in Japan?
$390,000.
When it's cold in Japan?
Yeah. Now it's
Nice.
warm.
In the winter?
Yeah, winter. Yeah, really
Right.
cold. But it depends on area.
Yeah.
Yeah. For
Where are you
example,
from?
Southern. I'm from Fukuoka, Kyushu. It's southern of Japan, southern side. But yeah, Hokkaido is so. Oh, sorry.
I had 3 Japanese friends. They were brothers growing up, and they all had the coolest names. Kiyomitsu, Tomohiro, and Shinichi. And they called them Sean, Tommy, and Kevin.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
like that.
yeah, Sean, Tommy, and Kevin Kato. Because nobody could say, you know, Tomohiro,
Yeah, of course.
Shinichi, Kiyomitsu, Kiyomitsu.
Raised to 80,000 from Tamon. He's got the draw 2 here. Now Negreanu with this very rough Pat Jack, but a Pat Jack is above average in terms of your holding and does
Yeah, certainly.
rate to do somewhat well. Granted, this might as well be a smooth queen.
Yeah, I mean, in this spot, really what you're hoping is your opponent is wide and you get the fold.
Stay pat.
If they
She
call
does.
you,
I
you
win.
stay pat.
Yeah.
You
And
see them?
you probably fold if they
Very
bet.
good.
But you look across the table, and if you get a read that they're bluffing, maybe you call. You know, that, I mean, that's the theory behind what Negreanu just did. You know what?
The 2022 World Series of Poker is right around the corner, and there is no better time than now to lock in a PokerGo subscription. Don't miss any of the action. Sign up for a new annual sub or upgrade now using the promo code USPO22 to save $20 off the yearly
No
price.
gamble, no future, right?
That's true. I don't have the patch.
No. Appear?
Too many cards.
No. Yeah. I thought. Yeah.
Too many cards.
And it's a little misdeal there. Happens.
Yeah, I mean, so in those spots, one of the things that you can do is say, hey, when I 3-bet the button here, I'm just 3-betting all of my pat hands as opposed to divvying it up. Because, like, obviously, if you just call the big blind and you stay pat, you generally
Looks a little weak,
Looks
right?
a little weak.
Yeah.
So you could try to find a way to do that and mix up your range some. But a lot of people go with the just 3-bet everything. Now, what that ends up meaning is based on the distribution of pat hands, if your opponent knows you're doing that, you can start to get 4-bet, knowing that it's hard to continue with any pat jack, which is if you do it with all your Pat Jacks, half your hands will be Pat Jacks.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, some of them will be convertibles that you could break and draw to a 7 or 8, you know, etc. Even Pat 10s get a little uncomfortable. So there are ways to combat that, but that's a very simple strategic move there is 3-bet all your Pat hands. And, you know, in a situation where you're not getting fought back at, it'll work a lot. Your opponents, you know, most opponents will fold their draw 2s.
No limit hold'em now, as Nakamura defends his big blind against the Gostisa open. Ace-9 outflopped by Queen-5, a big one here for Nakamura. Top and bottom pair with that Queen of Hearts working for dessert. Gostisa follows through for 40,000.
Nakamura's hand is kind of big enough here that he could slow play it by just calling, yeah, which is you know, an interesting decision. And Gostisa just, despite playing tight, just never. Ooh, and now one of the cards Gostisa could consider bluffing here.
King on the turn.
Because bluffing will not work out well for him versus 2-pair.
Certainly not for the time being. He does have the Broadway draw working. Could check back and realize the equity, which he does. And now the 2-pair for Nakamura gets counterfeited. Shouldn't be too much of a concern in terms of his holding changing to kings and queens with the jack kicker on board, but he will tread lightly, checking and showing down the winner.
3-pair, yeah.
Gostisa really hasn't been able to get anything going here.
No, he played solid for this whole final table, and now that he's 3-handed and he's played a few more hands, very reasonably so, nothing's worked out, and he's doesn't have too many more hands for things not too many more chips for things not to work out, right?
21 bigs as it stands right now. Here in level 13, 15 and 25,000.
Yeah, given the amount of play, this actually went pretty quickly. I mean, we're seeing actually these two guys with 3 million here, Nakamura and Negreanu. They're well over 100 big blinds.
We could be in, you know, provided that Gostisa does end up finishing in third, we could be in for a pretty prolonged heads-up battle. Granted, this is big bet. A couple of the right recipe hands end up in a cooler spot, and it's over quick, but it's an awful lot of big blinds to imagine getting into a pot.
Yeah. I mean, there's 264 big blinds between 3 players right now. Even this 3-handed, if Gostisa, you know, if his luck turns around and, okay, yeah, turn the queen deuce off into a raise there versus the limp. Like it, definitely a play you're supposed to mix in. But yeah, I mean, even 3-handed, this could last a while if he turns it around.
You
I mean,
know
they're pretty
from
deep.
Before?
What?
Ren Lin, you know him for a long time?
Ren
Lin. You know, touchdown Tom Brady.
Just last year,
yeah,
I played PLO game with him. And
yeah.
that was for the first time.
Okay.
And so impressive, so
yeah.
I couldn't forget about him.
Yeah. Funny. He's funny.
Yeah.
Queen 10 in the small. Playing for a limp. 7 trace suited in the big for Daniel. Top pair for Gostisa.
Yeah, so even though his kicker's only a 10, and it's not going to matter in this pot.
Is he also
quite big because
GE?
if
so, yeah.
Negreanu has ace king
He
or
always wears it. So.
ace queen or king queen, you're probably going to hear from it. So definitely at least 2 streets of value for the queen 10 there, depending on runouts.
Like
You see the movie Karate Kid?
Yeah,
Mr.
Japanese
Miyagi?
dude like that.
He does like this, and then he fixed his leg's broken. He does like this, and then leg is okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So how you been, Ollie?
Like penises or
It's been
something.
a minute since we've been in the booth together, but not too long.
I think you and I were doing the World Series of Poker Europe last time we were in the booth with one another, and had some good times there, covering the action in Rozvadov. It was a little bit dicey. Weren't certain whether or not a COVID outbreak in Europe was going to cause that event to be cut short, that series rather, but they powered through. And we saw some very interesting approaches to the game of poker during some of those final tables.
Those were some fun hands.
Made us want to book a flight.
Yeah.
Jack 9 tray here as Nakamura outflops the ace-10 suited of Negreanu. Negreanu played this for a limp pre-flop out of the small.
Yeah, gonna continue here, and I don't blame him with the backdoor nut flush, straight, big cards. But definitely not a great turn card for him, given his hand.
At the same time, though, if ace-10 was good on this flop, it is still good now. So we'll see whether or not he's going to remain curious.
Yeah, but Nakamura might not bet his hand now.
Yeah.
Because it's also not the best card for a 9. I mean, if you're good, you're still probably good. If your opponent had the 3, you're behind now. Ooh. Now, I expect Negreanu to bluff this card some.
Check.
Okay, he's hoping his ace-10, ace-high showdown is good.
Check.
Ace-10, no pair.
And he's able to get there free of charge. And your expectation centers around the idea that some of those straight draw combos would have binked the king there.
Straight, backdoor, front door, nothing.
A lot of great hand back.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you can have queen 10, you can have hit the king, you can obviously have 3 3s, you can even decide to value bet a jack. So it kind of depends on what sizing Negreanu uses for his bluffs. And then his bluffs are going to be missed hearts, but I mean, ace high, I'm not saying you need to bluff ace high there, but I think you could consider about it, especially with the 10 blocker. So
it's got to look back at the 3 players who have already fallen victim to the 3 that remain. It was Riordan, Weisman, and Chidwick in that order.
I'm not even saying I think bluffing his hand is right, but I am saying I think it's something you should consider. And I think he did.
Negreanu limping the button with the 7-8 offsuit. We saw Gostisa punish the Nakamura limp already once. Will he do the same with this bottom end of his range? 9-3 offsuit. Indeed he will.
Nope. Didn't have it that time.
Daniel suspicious. He's
you
probably
did very
picked up on the fact so far that Gostisa has
I mean, just
punished
the
limps
music.
in
Like
this
drum.
game every time, and was probably thinking, yeah, maybe he's just that's his play, but
Many
probably
years.
just decided at the end of the day
Many
that
years.
8-7 off wasn't enough, even if he's right about the read.
hand.
Now, under Gostisa's hobbies in his bio, it does list an affinity for road trips and traveling, but the one that jumped out at me was motorcycles.
Oh, wow.
Now, I would have thought, as we see Nakamura picking up 2 red queens on the button here, that what with the number of people who don't bode too well over the course of their motorcycle riding careers in terms of...
Wow. Hold on. Did you just notice what I just noticed?
No, what was that?
It's Nakamura here with the biggest hand he's probably picked up pre-flop this entire final table. Just, I mean, you know, we get to see it, but he just, this was the most he puzzled, like, what should I do, this, whatever. I mean, wow.
And it looks like Daniel noticed it too.
Yes. And maybe it got Daniel to do something, but it was the opposite read. It actually wasn't because he didn't have a good hand. It's because he had a very good hand, and he was trying to decide exactly what he wanted to do.
Is it fair play, or is it considered poor etiquette?
What?
To sort of feign uncertainty when you have a nutted hand like this on the button.
I don't even know that he probably was uncertain. He was probably thinking, should I limp or how much should I raise?
How much?
500.
Why?
Why? Because I want.
Oh, shit. 500 here. Present. Merry Christmas.
This, yeah.
Oh, I'm so dead. I have a queen. Wow. Suited queen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
I should have trap.
No, I'm dead.
No.
I can't win. I need spades. Wow. Nice hand. Pocket queen. Killed me.
Last hand hold. Hand 2 of 3.
Better I raise. Maybe I'll lose more.
But to answer your question, I think it depends on the situation. To me, what had just happened wasn't bad etiquette. I actually thought he genuinely was
Right, so let's not
thinking about what
allege
to do.
that there was any sandbaggery at play there. But I've always wondered, because it bugs the hell out of me when I see it in our game,
Oh, really?
when somebody
I
does
like
that
it.
stuff.
I feel like you're getting information. People doing anything, whether genuine or acting, like now at least you see that they're considering something and you decide, is this person genuinely considering it or are they acting? And then you can try to make a read-based decision off of that. Whereas if someone's just completely stoic and does something after 3 seconds or whatever, there's just nothing to go on. So to me, I like it even if they're acting.
I hear you. I just think it's like, buddy, we all see the same thing. Like, stop. It's
No,
a little insulting.
I get it.
You know what I mean? We don't need all of that here.
I get it. I just view it from the sense of, hey, they're actually like giving me something I can try to make a better decision with.
Right. Meanwhile, Negreanu's decision pre to limp the queen jack was met by a tax from Nakamura pre-flop to 85,000, and here he faces the follow-through of 60K, which he is going to tear one off against, and an interesting card, which puts Nakamura in the lead with a pair of nines now, but gives Negreanu the open-ender.
So, you know, I personally think that Nakamura's C-bet sizing for two guys over 100 big blinds here on the flop was like way too small, going 60 into like 200. To me, it's just not really a thing sizing on the 10-3-4s. This, and it, you know, encourages Daniel to float, which is, you don't want the guy to float when you have the 9-7 there. To me, you should be doing at least half pot. You know, so I didn't really like his sizing. Now it ended up working out, and he checks back, and you know, I feel like Negreanu's going to bluff this quite a bit.
And you can't blame him. The line certainly suggests that Nakamura took his little shot and might be done with it.
Yeah, with the 2 being a card where now some straight draws low, he wouldn't bluff. You know, queen high is actually way towards the bottom of his range, and he doesn't have hearts. So it's kind of a mandatory bluff. And I mean, this is kind of a mandatory call after picking up the 9, in my opinion. So
roughly 2/3 pot, the sizing.
Yeah, and you know, you can't love it as a 9, but this would be kind of a crazy fold in my opinion. I mean, I don't think you should consider folding a 9 here till the guy's going over pot.
Queen high straight.
Straight?
Queen high straight.
9 high straight.
9 high straight. Yeah, 9 on the turn. Nice hand.
Yeah, and so just to me, that
9 high
sizing.
straight's good.
10-3-4, it's got some flush draws. When you bet there, even if you have multiple sizings, I don't like going as low as, you know, 25% pot or whatever. But yeah.
Good enough.
And now, Rast, Nakamura has put some distance between himself and Negreanu, and that does create some different context as we get a look at the chip denominations brought to you by Storm X. With enough separation, Nakamura can begin to put a lot of ICM pressure on Negreanu's stack, with Gostisa sitting there at 645.
100. Yeah, I haven't really played with Nakamura before. I mean, you said you did play with him quite a bit.
Yeah.
You know, what kind of player did you find he was in the mixed game? Is he
Well, we play a
aggressive
collection of carnival games. I mean, you win 2 small stuffed animals. You can trade up for a medium. We got water pistols, balloons. I mean, it's really circus. But I found that over time, he definitely was very observant, picked up on trends, was able to sort of deduce ranges and improve with each session that he played against us. And the last session I remember playing with him, he absolutely murdered us. So obviously a guy who has a lot of card sense and loves the game and really has a pleasant affect about him. And here he is atop the leaderboard in event number 4. 3 of our original 6 players remaining as the boys head to a break. You get a look at the chip count. 3.65, 2.3 and change, and 670 for Gostisa, the shorty. Rast and I will step aside, but we will return shortly with more coverage of event number 4 from the US Poker Open. That slot as we get things underway. 10 and 20,000 with a 20K big blind ante, and there is Tamon Nakamura as we begin with pot limit Omaha.
Yeah, Reirden has exactly the starting stack. I played this tournament yesterday. You start with 125K. So here he is with a starting stack in the money at the final table.
Chidwick with a couple of 10s and spades. From the cutoff, opens to 50K, 2.5x. Riordan doesn't love the ace-jack 8-4 Badoogie.
Kind of an interesting open. I would say maybe like slightly loose,
so
but
are we still switching every 7?
It's a spot where
yeah, okay, still every 7.
The fact that Riordan has only 125K there, it's a hand that's going to play decently well against.
So that's going to be 30. That's 30.
And all
US Poker Open, whatever.
40 minimums to bring in.
Definitely, in my estimation, and I feel as though you may agree, Brian, one of the gutsiest forms of poker, and really a lot of artistry goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think within the context of big bet games, of which I have a lot of experience, I mean, one of the mixes I play is a lot of big bet games, including ones that aren't traditionally played. I will say that in some respects, because there's only 2 streets, this is maybe the simplest, but that does not mean it's a simple game. And I think there's a lot that goes into this. Not only is there a technical aspect, but there's also definitely a kind of like, does he have it or not, live poker getting reads aspect, because there's a lot of situations in this game where you kind of find yourself in a spot where you're bluff catching. And so, you know, yeah, there's a little bit of like, do you have some better cards in your hand in terms of blockers, but then also just like looking across the table and saying, does this guy have it or not, for whatever reason.
Fairly snug muck.
It is Ali.
Actually would have raised the deuce 3-7 from that spot, although maybe not with the ICM situation and Negreanu in the blinds, but it wouldn't have been unreasonable. And I even think like deuce 3-7 with a blocker, you would see a raise.
And you see Negreanu just getting after Wiseman, who moved all in, could have drawn 1 to the jack 7 or 2.
Don't open with that hand. Not good. Not much opportunity.
In tournament situations, because you get some spots where when you move all in there for 20, 25 blinds, you know, a lot of the time your opponent might fold a lot, so you're incentivized to do it. But then if, you know, people know you're doing that, then you start getting called wider. But like, can someone really do it for ICM? I mean, Negreanu is the person that can. You know, a lot of people would probably choose to flat Wiseman's hand and draw 2 to the deuce 3-7. But, you know, Wiseman took a different route, and, you know, obviously it worked out well.
They lied to me. They told me thank you.
Yeah, but it's sometimes we are joking back at all.
Wiseman with 590K is the short stack now, has 29 bigs.
So yeah, even though this is a gutter, you know, I like his open here. You know, this is only 5-handed. It's relatively short. And, you know, you have a 1-card draw. Obviously, a deuce gives you the best hand possible. But, you know, I think this is an open.
$70,000 to go as Negreanu mulls over the deuce 3-4 jack. Flushes and straights do count against you.
You're not gonna draw 2?
Yeah.
Professional.
So to the 3.5x open,
2-card draw.
Negreanu doesn't call to draw 2, but maybe to a much smaller open sizing he would have.
Welcome back inside the PokerGO studio for continuing coverage of the 2022 US Poker Open. It is event number 4, the Big Bet Mix. Ali Najad alongside Czar Rast. Feel free to hit us up on Twitter if you happen to be streaming us live this afternoon. Quick peek at the chip counts as we come back to pot limit Omaha. Tamon Nakamura of Japan, 3.65 million, sits atop the leaderboard. Negreanu in the middle, and then Gostisa in third. As you get a look at the current standings for the overall series title and that extra $50,000 in cash, Shannon Shore up top after taking down event number 1. And we resume with pot limit Omaha, blinds at 15 and 30,000. 30K big blind Annie. 3 Broadway cards and clubs for Gostisa.
Yeah, gonna play this hand. The question is limp or raise, and goes with limp. Totally reasonable. Probably going with limp, call a raise.
Gostisa's been pretty snug, picking his spots, not really finding himself in murky waters.
Well, yes and no. I mean, he has gone after it in a few pre-flop, small spots and no limit hold'em. But yes, so far in these other games, he has played quite snug.
Both players checking the ace-king-8 board. Now a 9 of clubs on the turn adds the club draw to the gutty and pair of kings for Gostisa. He checks once more, and Negreanu remains uninterested. Oh, wow. And now the 10, giving Negreanu the nuts.
Well, basically his only out, the 10, not the
non-club. Well, the clubs in Gostisa's.
Yeah, but so
Gostisa with kings up, checks it.
Probably going to pay off a bet here, and I can't say I blame him, but
depends how big that bet is.
Does
though,
depend.
Right?
There's 3 different straights. Remember the queen jack, the jack 7, and the 7-6. So it's by no means auto, but after checking 3 times and having kings up.
90,000.
So yeah, the pot sizing, you can't love his chances of beating any value hands. And now he, does he decide how often does he want to bluff catch here, et cetera, et cetera.
Not to be results oriented, but do we maybe rewind to the turn and Gostisa sprinkle something out there?
I'm okay with his turn play, frankly. He's got a hand. He does only have a pair of kings. He's not getting an ace to fold. With the queen 10 gutter plus those clubs, he's kind of like mashing a lot of draw hands that probably don't have very much equity to beat him. He could bet his hand, but I'm okay with this decision to check call as well. I do think saying, oh, he should definitely bet there is...
Not definitely, just asking the question.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate it. And actually, if he was going to bet there, what I would generally probably like is a small sizing that puts some other hands in like very tough situations, something like less than half pot.
You have queen jack? Don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Yeah,
I would call.
Yeah.
I would call with a pair.
Oh, wow. Like you have flush draw, also queen jack.
Yeah.
Wow.
Come on. No way.
Kings on the button for Gostisa. Earlier on, we did see him open fold some bad kings with Chidwick behind him. And the landscape was quite a bit different there than it is here, and so he will open pot, and he has run in to a real fire breather here. Negreanu repots with no hesitation. Double suited aces, and he's got some wheel wrappiness.
Wow.
And another double suited hand. Ace high with a 3-card rundown.
Double suited. This is a good hand. It's an interesting decision here. I feel like watching Nakamura is going to fold, yeah, but I mean, in position to the guy with a lot of chips, there are some players who would probably play that.
A little speculator there.
Because what happens in a lot of spots, especially also I'd have to look at the sizing, but I'm not sure Gostisa can re-raise. So you get a spot where you'll get a lot of 3 and your head's up. Actually, because of that, assuming I'm correct, it's 235K yet, and Gostisa not being able to re-raise, I'm pretty sure with his hand, I like calling
45,
with the idea that you're going to get to see a lot of cards. There'll be dry side pot, and you're in position against the guy with a ton of chips.
Better than 2 to 1,
yes.
Closing the action, and the dry
with
side.
A hand that probably has a lot of live cards in it. I would actually play his hand, and which is it's such a terrible spot for Negreanu in a way, but
Is it?
Oh, did Nakamura reach into the muck and pull his hand back? Is that what that is?
Oh, good. We're gonna
He
get
heard
to
you,
talk
Ras.
about it as if he played the hand. You know, I love those theoretical rabbit holes. Let's go down the wormhole to the alternate universe where he played his hand and talk about what would have happened.
So Gostisa makes the call and flops
Oh my goodness!
a set
good flop
of
for you, I think.
kings.
I have the best Omaha high-low hand.
High
Double
low
suited
hand.
And you see
All set.
Wow.
the bad news for Negreanu there in this 1.1 plus pot.
So I need help. I need a doctor. Club.
had spades,
yeah,
too.
yeah. Backdoor
Of course,
flush.
there's no
right?
spades. Oh, I
No, no,
had.
you. I was
yeah,
dead.
I had a big hand. Double suited aces.
I'm not even sure if I can call.
Oh, you Badoogie?
But the,
Oh, you know, you had
but the not single suited.
If I had two suits, easy.
Pretty dream flop here for Gostisa,
Club for
who's
sweat.
just
Club
looking
for
to hold. One ace already dead.
Ace, too easy. No. Okay, now just ace. Or you have ace?
Actually. I
Yeah.
have.
So then I'm dead.
Oh my god.
Ace of,
One out. Oh,
yeah,
good shit.
ace of diamond I have.
And that case ace does not materialize for Negreanu.
205.
So Gostisa will take a big bite out of Daniel.
Yeah,
And now
I don't know.
Negreanu sits closer
blame
to
you.
Gostisa than he does to
You're really
Nakamura.
strong while you are dead or alive situation.
I actually think Nakamura would have. He can't continue on the flop if they're really to any bet almost. But I think he ends up winning that with the
The other
5-8?
8-6,
black.
5-8 or whatever.
He made it straight.
now.
I think.
I think so.
yeah, usually.
Yeah, 5-8. I think he had 5-8 in his
Win
hand.
one,
Ace
lose one.
5-8, either
Fair.
7 or 6.
Raise 75.
Grano raises it up on the button with a reasonable holding.
King, queen, 9-4. And another reasonable bit of kit here for Gostisa in the big, should
Oh,
he
wow.
choose to proceed, but decides to lay it down. And the oh wow Rast, is that a standard
Yeah.
defend for him?
I think so. I mean, so here's the thing is, he's in third and he's actually playing a pot against the guy who's in second. Like they're kind of clearly behind. And so I just think at 2.5x, he's just getting the right odds and his hands is too connected to lay it down. That's too tight.
Well, I think everybody should head over to shop.pokergo.com and check out our collection of swag and exclusive memorabilia. Shop now at shop.pokergo.com. I gotta be honest, I personalized that one a little bit, but really,
I liked it.
I was forced to deliver that one. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea. I'm just saying when I said, I think everyone should do it, I was playing off of you and then realized that that endorsement rang a little bit more robust than my
No
paycheck
gamble, no future.
suggests that it should be.
I hear you, brother.
Business
I was
daddy.
about to head over there, but personal endorsement, I still might do it.
Negreanu flops trip sixes here against Nakamura in a 75K a man pot pre. Tamon the Razor on the button. Both players check. Now Queen of Diamonds on the turn. Daniel still seeking Nakamura bucks as he checks once more.
So Nakamura has absolutely nothing. He does have the ace of diamonds. So I don't hate this. You know, it's a spot where he's going to try to pick this pot up, and I expect him to follow through if a diamond comes. Negreanu got what he was looking for with a bet here. Yeah. He has a pair in his hand, which is never good when you have the trips. It's much harder to improve, but he still has 3 of a kind, and wow, he managed to make a boat anyway. My guess is Nakamura gives up on that card. To me, his follow-through bluffs probably mostly happen on diamond runouts, especially now that he hit a pair, but we'll see.
Super clean river for Daniel. Really no cause for concern whatsoever, having filled up to boot.
Yeah, it's okay. He's going to go for it, but it's not going to work.
200,000.
I think this is a spot where some people would check back, but you know, he decides his 3 has basically no showdown, and he's going to bluff, which is pretty true. So, you know, that said, I don't see Negreanu ever folding 3 6s the way he played this hand.
Have you ever found yourself making what would be an objectively nitty call, which
no, just 3, pair 3.
I would imagine?
Yeah, pair 8s.
Yeah.
Full house.
Oh yeah, I forgot he filled up. He was deciding whether or not to raise. Sorry.
Yeah. So, do you ever do this though, with the intention of being able to get a look at your opponent's hand instead of raising and clearing out riffraff?
Oh,
Yeah.
I probably have done that before.
You know, giving up a little bit of potential value in terms of getting paid off, but picking up some of that intel.
I'm sure there's been times
Nice.
I would say generally not.
nice
But, you
call.
know, in 20 years of playing poker, have I ever done that? Probably.
But you know.
Yeah, small full house. Cool. Scared.
Well, if you're joining us on our YouTube channel, make sure to subscribe and obviously hit that notification bell to never miss a new video release.
I did it too.
First 8 events of this year's U.S. Poker Open being delivered on our YouTube channel, free of charge. If you want the rest, it's time to grab yourself a subscription. And plenty more comes with it, obviously. High stakes poker, poker after dark, and the rest of the PokerGO Tour Championship events, 150 of them in total. All can be yours, not to mention the World Series of Poker this year moving over to Bally's, being rebranded the Horseshoe, along with the Paris Hotel.
But too much gamble.
Too much
Changes
gamble?
in the air.
Also no future.
Yeah.
You know, the trickier thing about Negreanu's is I don't think it's, I will say this, I think if you have 2 excellent PLO players who really mix up their ranges, you know, a lot of them might raise in a spot. I think, especially when you're playing with people you don't know, the game's not hyper aggressive. One of the things is sometimes you just don't really get called by much worse with the worst full house check raising, right? The way a lot of people play PLO actually, as opposed to like some theoretical thing where you're mixing in a lot of bluffs with your check raise or whatever. You know, so it is one of those things where sometimes against an unknown and who's not playing especially aggressive, and I wouldn't say Nakamura is in the PLO. No. You know, it might not be right. You know,
he's out there fighting.
He's fighting, but not necessarily, you know, crazy, you know, thin value bets, call, check raise. I mean, they haven't been playing a lot, but, you know, most people actually don't play PLO that way, especially in tournaments. So it might not be right against the general population, even if you could argue it is theoretically.
Oh, position call.
And I love what you said there, because I think a lot of times what's lost in the fray is the idea that, okay, we know what the theory is, and the theory is sound in a vacuum. But when you actually survey your landscape and decide, well, there are some things that are causing me to maybe deviate from what my optimal theory-based play would be, because I know certain things to be true about this environment, then don't just go down with that ship, right? Make a few adjustments, make a few tweaks, and feel confident in doing so, right? Because you get a little bit too subscribed to that GTO, and now all of a sudden you're playing suboptimal given, you know, some of the information that you have at hand.
I would agree with everything you just said. I would change one word. When you said what I know to be true, I would say what I assume to be true. Because usually against most people that you're playing with, you know, it's kind of a Bayesian analysis of narrowing down what they have, but you really don't know. You have limited information, and you're trying to make a play based on the limited number of hands you've played with them.
Right.
Yeah.
3-way pot here, 9-10 Jack Rainbow, 75K a man, and Negreanu flops the joint.
Yeah, amazing flop for him, but no one else really has much of anything. The only person who does is Nakamura, but with diamonds being the only card not up there on the rainbow, it makes it a little bit less attractive to peel because he can't really hit those, even though he's got top pair and he's got a gutter to the nuts. Ooh, he slow plays it.
Oh, and now the jack pair's on the turn, and things become slightly more perilous for this king-queen. Nakamura with trips, ace kicker. Can't blame him for reaching for some chips in this three-way affair. And into 255,000, he bets 80, sub 1/3 pot. Easy release for Gostisa.
Negreanu, a very easy call here, in my opinion. I mean, he's obviously continue. He might think about whether or not he wants to raise. My guess is he just calls. You know, he has the best straight, and the board is paired, and he's going to call in position and kind of see what happens on the river.
And that pair on the board really does put the cuffs on this straight if you're facing aggression. Now the river, a 5.
Did
Boy,
that
the
give
4.
him his, oh, the 4. Okay.
The 4 would have been a nasty one.
So now what does he do here? My guess is he's going to try to show down ace-jack as opposed to turn it into a bluff. You know,
is it maybe a merge, though, if you bet a little something on the end here for slight value?
You bet, no. He's not. To me, you either show down or you go like pot.
That's good news for me.
Because one of the things he's got to be thinking,
jack.
or he should be thinking, in my opinion, in PLO is, while Negreanu doesn't have king-queen as much, Negreanu could easily have a hand like 7-8 or even queen-8, and with the board pair and me having a jack, let me try to get him to fold the weaker straights that check back.
Like your hand was live.
And if you're going to do that, I think you have to go for a big sizing. So I like either check or big sizing as him, and I wouldn't blame him if he went for a big sizing. I think it's an interesting bluff, but.
I love that shot in Negreanu there. 5 memorable years in the course of his career. Of course, 2014, the big haul. 8 figures, 10 million plus. 4 million in 2018 and 04, 13 and 21 in the 3 million range for a grand total of 46 million in career tournament earnings. As we transition to deuce to 7, no limit, single draw.
Yeah, D-Negs has just been out there putting out good results for a really long time in a lot of different games. And even stuff like, you know, I want to say this, so, you know, even though he did that challenge with Doug Polk and heads up, and I think most observers kind of knew, well, you know, I mean, a lot of his side bets, he was getting pretty big odds. But, you know, I mean, he's playing a guy who was one of the best heads-up players at his specialty. But if you look at this like, hey, he was just out there and he was paying some money theoretically in order to improve his game at a certain discipline. You know, there's a certain amount of, like, let's look at that in a positive light. Like, Negreanu has been a guy who's really put himself out there, worked on his game, and been pretty open about a number of things, and, you know, stayed relevant and winning a lot of money and at the top for a long time because he's willing to do that.
The 5 card.
So, you know, he's had a great poker career.
More like
You just have the nuts. Always.
Today's broadcast brought to you in part by Zenny Eyewear.
Yeah, you better have the nuts. Your definition of the nuts better actually be the nuts.
Daniel not rocking Zennies here this afternoon, but he does look sharp in those Ray-Bans.
Ooh,
I feel like I don't see him wear sunglasses all that often at these final tables. It's a bit of a rarity.
yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Great news for me.
Nakamura getting the walk here.
You had 48.
47.
Players talking about the pip value of their holdings, oftentimes a prop, I believe, Rast, when you guys are playing, trying to juice the game up with a little bit of side action.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, this is an interesting thing right now, but I feel like, I think kind of mix game tournaments, end of it, is right up Negreanu's wheelhouse. I think I bet him versus Nakamura at this point. I think he's probably got a little read off of Nakamura with that one, like the thinking about it, and he saw and he made the 3-bet, but realized, oh, he was strong. There've been a few plays where maybe I feel like Nakamura's and stuff. I think I would lay at evens, I would lay this 20% chip difference here and take Negreanu's experience. If you're interested in a little $100 bet on who wins this.
Look at Rast trying to juice the pay. If I lose, I'm going to break even on the afternoon, Rast. I mean, come on. I also don't know whether or not you caught this, but and it may be nothing at all, of course, but when Nakamura was in position and fired that second barrel after he took a little stab on the turn and then paired the 3 on the river, bet 200,000, got called by Negreanu with the full house, I believe it was. Kind of cleared his throat right before he delivered the bet. I mean, Feels like a crack of the Oreo at the ear kind of, you know, real surface level thing, but worthy of note, and we'll see whether or not we get another data point further on down the line.
Yeah, listen, Negreanu, as we know, is a very experienced live player who definitely gets reads. And, oh, wow, caught right in there and not a diamond. Oh, wow, both of them.
Getting things. Nakamura's got himself a 10-7 here. And Gostisa, who defended the big against the 100K Open, has got himself the 9. Yep.
Wow, yeah. I mean,
and the 10-7 is going to feel so good.
against that sizing and with the 9-8-7, I think he's going to call. I mean, he's never folding. The actual thing in some of these spots you draw 2 here, you can find raises, but again, this gets into the thin this or whatever, and it's not the best 9. But I wouldn't hate a raise, to be honest. I would not hate one, and I like that he's thinking about it, frankly, because I think he should be thinking about it. Blind versus blind here, you're going to be up a lot of not so great 1-card draws, and it's definitely, you know, very reasonable to think about going for value here. So I love that he's taking his time and thinking about this, whether he calls or raises.
10 seconds.
The danger of the raise, of course, is that you do open up the action to Nakamura.
Well, I mean, you're pretty much going all in if you raise.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the difficulty about raising there is you're pretty much always getting called by better.
Raise you or not, and then if you're
Worse.
actually calling me with like,
The bad 9 you had.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. It was like,
That's very thin if you did that.
yeah.
Yeah, but actually,
Well,
you know, it depends on dynamics. I don't think it's bad.
Yeah.
It's
a little
close.
bit,
A lot of those things depend on the dynamic. But I love that he thought about it. I think that shows that he does have a decent understanding of this game to me. Because,
if I have like a better 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a better 9 is like auto. His hand is actually very reasonable to still maybe do it with. But again, it's one of those things where it might not be right depending on how the play has been. And I actually think it's very reasonable he didn't do it in that spot. But I love that he thought about it.
These are blockers, these 5s and 3s for Gostisa. So it's not on the strength of his actual hand, but rather the card removal for Negreanu that he opens to 105,000, and Daniel's got himself that gut shot 10 draw with a blocker of his own.
So I'm interested to see if Daniel calls how Gostisa plays his hand. I mean, if Daniel raises, Gostisa almost certainly folding. Okay, he calls. So now we're going to get to see. Is he drawing 3, or is he going to do something goofy?
Oh, might feel a little snowy in Vegas. Yeah. So the snow is on for Gostisa, who stands pat. And now Negreanu, will he take 1 every time here, Rast?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's against blind versus blind. I would just take 1 and draw to the 10.
I changed my mind.
Oh, he's going to draw 2. Wow, okay.
Showing a lot of respect for Gostisa's pat range here.
Pat 2.
And so Negreanu is going to draw. And did he pair once more?
Yeah.
It looks that way. That's a different suit on that 8. And now Gostisa has to bet this river. But against a draw 2, he's going to feel pretty comfortable in doing so.
Oh, yeah. And I doubt Negreanu bluff catches with a pair of 8s. But here's the thing to me. You got 1 to the 10-9-8-6 gut shot, you know, or 2 to the 9-8-6. Like,
how much more are you gaining?
Is not much. I think you just draw 1 to the 10-9-8-6 and, you know, try to make your 10. To me, you know, I mean, here's the thing. Your opponent is going to have all the jacks, blind versus blind, and maybe even a few queens. So should have some queens.
There's a look at the final table. Those still with us and those already eliminated. Brought to you by Global Poker, free poker at its best as we work toward that almost $170,000 first place prize here at event number 4 of the 2022 U.S. Poker Open. Points toward that Gilded Eagle trophy of ours also available. Shannon Shore currently the overall series
The
leader.
results will be the same.
So he opened basically this exact hand a little earlier and got 3-bet by the 8 draw. I think he should open it again. Let's see if he does. I think with this ante, yeah, no, I actually think that's an open on the button, but he maybe felt like he learned his lesson last time.
He got away with something. Now he
didn't learn the right lesson, in my opinion.
Doesn't want to steal any more cookies. Oh my goodness.
Jesus.
A powerhouse here for Nakamura. The 9-7-6.
I have like 1.3.
Pat.
Yeah, really strong hand here. It does get into one of those things that when you're, 80 big blinds deep, it can
400.
can be a little uncomfortable if you're starting to time out getting all in, especially in a tournament setting. That said, easy 3-bet. Now Negreanu has a bit of a decision. 1 card 10 draw, out of position. My guess is he probably lets it go, especially if he thinks Nakamura is not being overly aggressive with him.
Good hand. Yeah, I was drawing dead. Drawing a 10-5.
Yeah.
10-6.
You had a mate hand?
You had a 9,
Pot
9-7.
Pot 9, 9-7.
Oh my god. Wow.
10, 6, 5, 3, I think. Or deuce.
It's another one of these things in no limit single draw. It actually makes your hand a little bit better in a lot of those spots when you have a blocker that you're throwing away. If your opponent's also drawing one, it's more likely that they don't have one of, in this case, a 5. And if he needs a 5, you're now blocking that. There's one less in the deck. It's worth a couple percent. Oh. Probably folding.
Negreanu with the 10 draw opens to 75,000, and this is a beautiful draw for Gostisa. The 8 perfect.
40 bigs. He could re-raise or jam this. I think calling is probably a little snug.
How much out of position re-raising do you want to do when you're not Pat?
I mean, you need to do some, especially when the button's going to be open bad 1 card 10 draws and 1 card jack draws even. And
right.
Yeah.
And the 3-bet does come in.
Another big one?
And get through.
Oh yeah, you had a much better draw than I did. I was drawn to a 10 again. Nice hand. Pretty.
Really?
Ugly but pretty,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
like
it's not there yet, but
Yeah.
it's like it's
nice.
like it's like a ace king where it's like not a pair, but it's pretty.
Yeah,
But it's
good.
like I'm ready to go.
like that, yeah.
Ace king's a good analogy for it.
Yeah,
That's what you had. You had ace king.
Yeah.
yeah.
And if I had 4s, you just need to hit. Like if I had a Pat 10, that's 4s.
Yeah, just win a flip and that's it, basically.
Yeah.
It's 105 total.
Gostisa goes with an open and takes it down.
2021 was Gostisa's best year ever on the live circuit. Rast, he made 8 Player of the Year qualified final tables, winning 3 titles along the way, including a World Poker Tour online main event title, $5,300 buy-in, picked up $959,000 and change, invested one David Peters heads up.
Oh, wow. Oh, and he is, in fact, it's one of Ali's closest friends.
Yeah,
so
you thought I was just saying that because he's wearing the hoodie?
Well, I thought you were saying because it is similar to a lot of colorful hoodies that Elise wears, but they are actually
I
friends.
waited for more.
They met in a
Welcome to the world
a
of
hoodie fan Reddit thread.
waiting for more cards.
Everything is on Reddit, really.
Isn't it?
It's like, is there any obscure topic that you want to ask a question or discuss? It's
Yeah.
somehow some Reddit thread about it.
Any Google search I have, there's Reddit on the front page, almost always. Queen 7-4 here as we transition to no limit hold'em. Daniel's ace high remains that way. Nakamura has flopped middle pair. Both players checking in this limp pot pre. Now Negreanu binks a 3 as Nakamura adds a gut shot to the resume.
Nakamura going to start trying to get some value here. Second pair, check back, plus a gutter.
60,000.
And let's see what Negreanu does. Just bottom pair against 2/3 sizing. He could find the fold. Yep. Negreanu's starting to play very well, in my opinion, against Nakamura. So even though he's been losing chips, he's basically made the right decision in like every hand. So I think he has a good read on what Nakamura is doing at this point. But, you know, I mean, still can't. Still, if you got the worst hand every time, it's hard to win.
And a look at event number 5 in progress. There we find Shannon Shore, the overall leader, along with, I believe that's Adam Hendricks there in between them, and El Jefe, Kerry Katz. Parking his bones. Chris Brewer there in the background. Looks like Lucky Chewy as well in the distance.
After
Chidwick.
we're done in the booth, I think I'm going to hop in.
Are you?
Yep.
There you go.
9 high like a boss.
9 high like a boss. Me too, I had 9 high. 9-6.
9-3 off.
8-4. Diamonds.
Good.
That's way good.
You had 9-3?
8-4. Sweet.
And today's coverage also brought to you in part by Tequila Comisario Ultra Premium Tequila. I feel like we could really spice the booth up. We got a little pro bono bottle of Comisario in here.
I'd have a drink with you, Ali.
There's a lot of people who've been wanting to have a drink with me because I don't drink. And they want to see what kind of lunacy ensues if I actually got tipsy.
I didn't know that. I wouldn't have suggested if I did, but.
No, I'm not offended. I too wonder what I'd be like drunk. 10-9 deuce with a couple of clubs here as it's Nakamura's turn with the ace high, but Negreanu has not outflopped him with 5-6 in this raise pot pre. 65K ahead, both players checking, and the 8 of clubs on the turn now providing some paths to victory for Negreanu as the equity jumps to 39% for his hand.
Certainly. He's got 6 high, but a gutter and a flush draw, and might try to pick this pot up. And it's going to be basically impossible for Nakamura to continue this holding.
Yeah. Where are you trying to go with ace high from there?
I did not have a straight.
You would bet way smaller.
Yeah.
Or check.
Now the folks in the YouTube chat at one point did mention this, but if you didn't spy the flavor on that Negreanu scarf, little Tom Ford brought to the afternoon by Daniel. Looking sharp. Of course, Crystal's right across the way. If you ever need anything overpriced, you can just head right over there.
Hold'em goes by quick.
Drop a package off. I don't think those hoodies, though, are available at Crystal's.
No, probably a different vendor.
Not part of the Christian Dior Fall/Winter 2022 collection.
Christian Dior's loss.
Ace 1-5 total.
Ace
Quick, fast.
7. Raise and take it. Negreanu tried to slide in there with the king high. Limp.
The war drums.
Yeah, to me, looking at this dynamic so far, it's basically been when Nakamura's been aggressive with Negreanu, he's pretty much had a decent or a good hand every time, and Negreanu's let him take it. Will this dynamic turn into Nakamura making a few moves? And if that happens, will Daniel still fold? That's, to me, the question. And so far, you know, there hasn't been anything new that's happened. But, you know, hopefully I would like to see an answer to that question at some point in the next, you know, bit that we're watching this.
And obviously the answer would be brought further into focus if we knew whether or not these guys have spotters that are currently feeding them hands on the delay to help resolve some of the, you know, curiosity, certain spots where they're wondering, what did he do this with? What did he do that with?
Yeah, for sure.
Daniel's got the best of Tamon here, ace-9 against ace-3. Position and dominance, and an ace-high flop. Nakamura checks it over to Daniel. 2-10 in the middle, and he'll check back. 5. Keeps the 9 kicker in play for Daniel.
And Nakamura can't win the pot now. Can only chop.
Second check from Tamon, and another check from Daniel.
Great card for Daniel. Now he wins rather than chop. And I do expect him to get a bet here because one of them will bet.
And one couldn't blame Nakamura for maybe taking initiative here at this point.
No, no, definitely not.
And he seeks 160, is it?
That's an ace. That's not an ace. That's an ace. See, kicker. Ace, come on. That's an ace.
Yeah.
No, ace. Just fold your hand when I call. Muck.
Nice hand.
Thank you.
It's great to see these guys playing.
Come on. I gotta come with an ace. That's not an ace.
Yeah,
that's like a 6 high. No hand.
Almost nothing.
Yeah.
Playing top-class poker.
That's it. Bet. You say good
here at this final table, and you start to understand why my group had so much fun with Tamon. I mean, he's just full of laughter, full of joy, enjoying the moment. It doesn't have to be this tension-filled affair.
Yeah, he's very jovial.
135?
Even just rolling with stride with
I was going to bet 105.
with Negreanu right now.
30,000 extra.
Oh my gosh.
There's a little bit of edge to Negreanu's joking, in my opinion, during that whole exchange, but 65. Nakamura handled it with complete nonchalance and.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he perceives it to be that, and I don't think Daniel's ill-spirited at all. I think he's just having fun with a guy who realizes is there to have some fun too.
Definitely didn't mean ill-spirited, but in the sense of he's like, oh yeah, that's not an ace. When I call, your hand's never good.
Oh,
you know, I think there are some players who would start. Oh, is he saying I made a bad value bet or this and whatever? Maybe get a little testy, argumentative or whatever. I know there's probably some past me's that might have reacted that way to that. Nakamura just
you know the dirty diaper?
Yeah.
Dirty diaper?
Use 3. Oh. But I don't think because the guy from Bigsby, the World Series main event. It was like raise, deuce 3 offsuit, re-raise. The guy got pocket kings, 4-bet, 5-bet, flop ace. The guy folded kings. Get deuce 3 off. You never saw that? Holy smokes!
Wow.
It was insane.
Every time,
I don't know if that's what I'm saying. I don't know if it's, but every time he had deuce 3, he played it like it was ace.
I'd Google it. That's awesome.
Dude, he literally bluffed kings after the guy put in like 4 bets pre, and the flop was an ace, and the guy just folded the kings. He had deuce 3. I think he called the 4-bet. He called the 4-bet with deuce 3.
Oh my God.
And then flopped the ace, and then he bluffed him.
Wow. I mean,
good poker. He was having fun.
Dirty driver?
No, dirty diaper. Like, you know, diaper for babies when they...
I see.
But dirty. Something in there.
Yeah. I understand.
Yeah. Okay, you understand you win then.
Yeah. I mean.
Oh, you did. 11.
10-3. 10 deuce.
Conversation shifting to the now infamous Nick Rigby. I'm sure you were there for that last one. The Dirty Diaper was christened and introduced to the poker world.
I did actually. This was the most main event coverage I'd ever watched this last year. A friend of mine made it real deep.
Dirty Diaper.
Made it down to like the final 20 or something.
Who was that?
Glenn Beebe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I watched a bit, and then at that point I just felt like you start watching, you follow it, and I just kept watching the rest of the final table. I'd never watched as much WSOP coverage.
It was a fun one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
You had like the right ingredients to make for some really interesting spots.
This is no limit hold'em? That's what the sign says. Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute, bro.
Well, let's play some PLO, shall we?
Daniel's going to play this. What's he going to do? He goes with limp. Nakamura probably going to go with limp as well.
His jacks out
He's
in
now
front of
folding.
Negreanu's.
Yeah, but not wanting to inflate a pot out of position here. Oh, wow.
The fourth 10 is accounted for in Gostisia's hand.
All these hands overlapping quite a bit there.
Yeah.
Who's got clubs?
It is Gostisia with the queen high flush draw and the gutter.
Let's see. Checks, no lead. Lead would have picked this up for him.
Check.
Nobody has an 8. I think Gostisia's going to win this. My guess is jacks and 10s are not going to want to bluff at this, and Gostisia is. Oh, wow, Nakamura bets. Oh, he has diamonds. Okay, I missed that. But to this small of a bet, I don't think Gostisia will fold.
Obviously, those paired boards are dissuasive developments for straight and flush draws.
Certainly. In my opinion, though, given that this is limped, okay, I think this is a little snug. Personally, I like calling here and then bluffing some runouts, because you can't just think it's only my equity of making my hand, right? You also have to think, hey, I'm going to, be able to bluff sometimes.
You also have to be wary of the fact that Negreanu is still involved in the pot behind you.
Certainly.
So you can get squeezed.
10 seconds.
Yeah, it's a tough continue for Negreanu. I like his fold. Actually, as Gostisia, I probably would have led that flop, frankly. But after not to that small of a bet, I think I would have floated.
And there's a look at the distribution as it stands now, brought to you by Global Poker. Free poker at its best. Shy of 3 million now is Nakamura, still in front of Negreanu. And Gostisia's done well for himself, at one point hovering in that $500,000 chip range, but has moved forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing about PLO is then obviously
like a
with
good
4
DJ
cards,
this
it
time
is
of
more
year.
likely somebody has a
Pauly
boat
D,
there.
you don't know that one? Do you know Pauly D?
Flip side is you can't
what?
always
No?
see the
Jersey
monsters in
Shore?
the closet.
Yeah.
Just because it's
I like
4
a good
cards.
mixed game tournament this time of year. I like a little PLO this time of year.
Yellow, yeah.
Very raggedy ace-high hand here. Actually, given that he's probably going to let it go.
You are not going to be able to see the flop because I had very strong cards.
Ooh. Yes, you did.
So no.
I was.
Limp, I can't believe you did. Limp would not have worked. Burning money.
No wonder I didn't have a good hand. You had all
I had everything. Yeah. Where'd Tamon go? Tamon, you're big blind. Race fast. Let's steal it. No, you're okay. You're okay. Take your time. Take your time. Oh, that guy calls my bluffs always. Unbelievable. Call me pair 8s. King 9.
That was the sickest call ever.
Something. 3 spades. I bet big. He's 2 8s call.
Wow.
Bacallero. Real bacallero that was. Huh? He was right. I was bluffing.
He was right.
I had ace queen. Bacallero.
This could be quite the extended match at this point, because these guys are not playing aggressive pre-flop poker, so this could go on for a while, considering how deep they are.
We did touch upon that prospect, as it may require the right two hands to collide in order to see any sort of elimination. Otherwise, might be time to strap in for the long haul here. 40-minute levels.
What's up, champion?
Far from a turbo, but also not
You're
egregiously
okay, I sit there.
slow pace. Gostisha's button open to 140, defended by Nakamura's 6-5-4 deuce, which turns into bottom two pair and has outflopped the two aces.
Yes, a well above average flop for Nakamura here.
He's got the gut shot as well, yeah. Sticking with the flow of play, he has checked it over to Gostisha, rainbow texture, and that range of the deck represented that he doesn't imagine Nakamura is going to be defending with a whole lot. He follows through for 100,000. Now Tamon left to decide how to proceed.
Yeah, does he raise, does he call? If he raises, is he raise calling it off? Probably. So he decides to call rather than check raise, call it off.
Now a third pair. Heart draw arrives.
If he checks, I really do expect Gostisha to check this back. Pretty bad card given that all the draws in the flop were low. Gostisha's probably just really wants to get to showdown with his aces here. And even though you can sometimes bet in these spots, this isn't a spot I would expect to see many bets, yeah. Basically just hoping to showdown versus a king and be good.
No action on the turn, and does Nakamura look for another street of value?
Yeah, will he bet his sixes up at this point? And if so, what sizing will he pick? I imagine, you know, it seems like your hand wants a smaller sizing.
Tends to agree. $1.50.
You know, the thing about the smaller sizing is it feels really milky if you're Gostisha. Like, like even though I've got the nut one pair, I mean, how often is my opponent betting a worse one pair for value here, even for a small sizing? So.
Time bank being used by Rok.
So this is an interesting kind of PLO spot, because one of the things is there's a lot of people who play PLO who kind of aren't really ever bluffing here, right? But then a better PLO player will start finding bluffs with hands like a pair of fours on the flop that didn't improve, and you just know that hand has no showdown, so you just basically bluffing those all the time. Like an example would be, you know, the ace 5-4
like
jack. You know, like gotta bluff with that. You know, but would they ever bluff that for quarter pot sizing, et cetera, et cetera? Interesting stuff, but he ends up finding a good fold.
Yes, he does.
I can only beat one pair.
You can beat one pair?
One pair?
Oh, because you had the biggest pair?
Biggest? I hope that was my target.
That was your target. You want aces?
Yeah, small two pair.
Yeah.
Wait, you had small two pair?
Two pair, yeah, 6-4, three pair, 6-4 deuce.
That's kind of what I was thinking, but.
Yeah, 6-4, 6-5 deuce.
Oh, so I was not good the whole way.
yeah. For the
it was really bad for me.
Well, yeah.
The second time Negreanu's limped a hand with a pair in it on the button.
Yuksa.
I hope.
You fold?
No, I hope this is better for me.
Gostisha out flopping Negreanu with the ace-king.
A pretty bad flop for Negreanu, all things told. The one thing he kind of has going for him is he's just versus the big blind, who has 100% of hands, or actually less than 100%, because he probably would have raised some of his better hands. But, you know, so he's just going to try to bet and just take down whatever equity here. My guess is we'll see. He probably only continues bluffing on possibly some flush or straight runouts where his queen's blockers are relevant. But beyond that, he's probably done. And then Gostisa, yeah, just with ace-king here, kind of, you have to defend.
Oh, now it's top 2, but Negreanu does pick up the Broadway.
So this is exactly the queen's relevant straight blocker. Will he bluff this? And, you know, I think versus a check big blind, I think there's a good chance he will. He's got to think his opponent's going to have a lot of kind of goofy hands that can't continue. Basically almost no sets, and he's blocking the straight. So, you know, he's going for it, and I like this decision. Ace-king here with no draws. Difficult spot. If you call, do you call the river? So I'm interested to see what Gostisa is going to do.
Well, you're blocking set of aces, set of kings. You presume that Negreanu's not limping the button with those sorts of holdings. Granted, the Broadway could be there, but if you wanted to take the higher variance approach and not allow a river, which doesn't include a lot of cards you love that aren't an ace or a king, to come off, do you ever check raise in this spot with Gostisa's hand? It's risky, obviously.
I don't really love reckless. Don't really love check raising there. First, by calling and calling, you're not risking your whole stack.
I saw the best club right there.
You kind of can only bet like 500 or so on the river, so you'd still be alive. Second, I just think every time you check raise and get it in, you're behind, and oftentimes like severely.
Well, the Run Good Poker Series All-Stars Pro-Am is coming to Vegas this December, and you can win your way to the event. Just head to rungood.pokergo.com to sign up for a free chance to win a seat. That's rungood.pokergo.com for the giveaway.
All right, I'll remember you after the tournament's over. I'll eat 40. You got 40K, boom.
Well, for a guy like myself that plays almost no pot limit Omaha ever, it's always nice to ask these questions and sort of be able to gain the insights of the mind of someone who actually does play and plays at some of the highest levels.
Yeah, it's just a spot where when your opponent continues, you're going to be way behind for the rest of your stack, basically, and you take away his bluffs. So and when you are behind, if you called and decided to call the end, you would be losing a lot less.
Right. Asked and answered as we see the limp being punished. Negreanu wagging his finger with the Queen 10-9 deuce at this 8-6-4-3 double. Gostisa mulling things over for the extra 100. Slid back to 1 million in chips.
Damn, I had a feeling he was going to do that. Damn, bro. For real?
Gostisa mixing it up, and it's probably going to work here. I think Negreanu, I don't think he's going to peel with this hand. It's with that dangler, it's just a little ugly.
Well, at least the dangler's suited. But yes, of course, this is not what he wanted.
No. Gostisa mixing it up. He also hasn't shown really that he's played aggressive pre-flop.
I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm going to fold.
Yeah.
I had a feeling you were going to raise there, and then I raised anyway, like a dummy.
I think I had the best, like, the coolest draw ever.
You had?
Yeah.
Well, then
everything double suited, the connected.
You had me crushed then. Bad. If that's the case, because I had a hand like that, except not very good. You were in the queen range. I was in the, like the jack high range, 10 high range, in the neighborhood.
I had a lower one.
Oh, lower. Damn.
Yeah.
If I knew that, I would have called.
It was the prettiest hand I saw, so I was like, oh, maybe.
Maybe it's a good thing. He'll just raise pot. Wow.
Nice action.
Looks like a Freedom of Information Act filing here, as everybody's just being very straight up with unshown cards.
If you have that hand, no matter what
I think that sometimes happens when people know it's being streamed.
Aces, I'm probably good.
Everybody
that's
assumes
why I almost called him. Like, if you only have aces,
just watch it anyway.
Yeah.
As long as they're all aboard, then there's no advantage.
I guess I have that sometimes.
Playing field remains level. King-9 tray here. Negreanu with
that's not the hand I thought you had. I thought you would have ace-king.
Nakamura with the dry ace of diamonds and a limp pot pre decides to fire in position.
Again, choosing that as a bluff, as a kind of, let's call it no draw equity bluff. He did it previously when it showed up on the turn, and you know, this time it's going to work with Negreanu with just middle pair. And you know, I think it's a pretty good way to find some c-bet airy bluffs in.
If you had more money, I would have called. I mean, more behind.
Yeah. If I had more behind, I would probably just call.
Does it make sense? You wouldn't have done that.
But this much, it felt okay.
Yeah, whatever. What are you going to do to me?
Yeah.
I'm already in, right?
Yeah.
I put 360, I'm coming for the rest.
Yeah.
Then what do you do when it comes king, queen, jack? You're just like,
I have no idea.
Just go, never mind.
I'm going to use a timing.
You
and
call a
just-
friend, phone a friend.
Yeah.
Anybody know what I'm supposed to do here?
Pretty much.
You're supposed to look up at the dealer and be like, I need my 5th card. This is no limit deuce, right? That beautiful 8 perfect 4 card. But it is still PLO here, and Nakamura limping the 10-5-4 deuce. Both players with 3 hearts advantage.
It's not as good.
Gostisa in that category, and the 7-6-5 is in both neighborhoods here. It's 2 pair and a gutty for Gostisa. It is bottom pair and an open ender for Nakamura. He will lead for 60.
Yeah, I can't see Gostisa folding here, but it is an interesting question what he's going to do as the pot continues. He has shown an unwillingness so far to put in money with pretty strong holdings, but that are well behind the nuts. Yeah, it should be a tough follow through for Nakamura. For me, it's, yeah, I'd probably give up.
Both players check on the turn. The queen changes nothing.
So Nakamura's hand has exactly 0 showdown. Will he try to bluff?
Pop.
There's your answer.
The answer is yes. Nakamura, the game where he seems to be mixing up the most is PLO, I will say. He's played a lot more. He stabs in a lot more kind of, okay, like you could go either way here spot. It seems like he's playing a little more straight up and snug in the no limit games, but this game he's been out there so far. You know, c-betting with the dry ace blocker for the nut flush, and now here, you know, recognizes the 5 has precisely 0 showdown,
This would be.
and it gets through.
It would be hero.
I think so. I have no. I don't have like anything that blocks your.
Straights.
Yeah.
Yes, but you do have 2 pair.
I did. I had it.
Your opponent checked, and yeah, it's.
Well, there's going to be some 3-4 in Nakamura's
Oh,
turn check range.
Of course, 7-6 doesn't need to be good, but
okay, fine.
I do think it's a spot with 2 pair there against an opponent who's
Deuce 7.
who's willing to find some bluffs. You really should consider.
Actually,
very
I've
strongly
ever
calling.
played this short-handed deuce 7 sing draw.
Oh, me
You never played?
It's a tough spot. I
played,
don't blame
but
him for folding.
Short-handed,
And he did
just
think about it.
Yeah.
3-handed and
Oh,
heads
so you
up.
did.
I've ever played.
Oh, you didn't play shorthand?
Yeah.
I did.
I know. So you have advantage
Maybe.
against us.
The problem when you have 2 pairs, you're not usually going to have many straight blockers with your 2 pair, right? Because you're already taking half your hand out.
Sure.
So it's harder to look at, oh, hey, I need blockers to call here. But
Nakamura cop into the fact that he has never played short-handed deuce, and then quickly Gostisa pipes in to say, me neither. Negreanu says, I have. A lot more experience in the short-handed no-limit single draw streets for Daniel.
I take professional, 1 card.
He's going to take 1 with the 10-7 draw.
Okay, fair
Nakamura
fight.
also going to take 1 to the jack-low draw. So Daniel with the best of it, but he is out of position. Let's see how they do. Negreanu with that disgusting ace.
this should go.
But even
Should go
uglier
check,
is Nakamura's pair of 4s.
I think bluffing 4s here is too wide.
Check.
Yes,
Don't
even
know.
though you never win,
Ace.
basically.
Good.
All right. It was ace, deuce, or 3. See, I didn't look. So either 10,
Yeah.
Actually,
or ace. Good enough.
pretty interesting decision here
You made pair?
on the draw.
Paired.
Yeah.
I think for Nakamura, I think when
that's
your
small,
opponent
so
draws
I
one with a Jack 8-4-3, I would actually probably draw 2 to the 8-4-3. But you know, I'm not saying it's for sure right, but that's what I would have done.
Wait a minute.
Ooh, there you are.
What's going on here? It looks like, yes, I did eat the last of the Marcona almonds from the craft services table, and that has earned me crew member of the day. I think it's a trolley crew member of the day. It's like you're actually the jerk of the day because you ate the last of the almonds. There's like 4 left, right?
Maybe
Can
they
I interest
just,
you in a few here?
Yeah, I'll take. Maybe they just
There you
love
go.
you. It had nothing to do with the almonds, and you're just interjecting.
No.
Oh, it was an almond thing?
No, I don't know, but I'm just telling you, they don't love me. I know that much. They might tolerate me, but love is a bit strong. Speaking of strong, how about the 9-7-6 Pat for Gostisa on the button here in 3-handed no-limit single draw? Would love to see some action, and he's going to get it from Nakamura, who's going to draw live with a 9-6 draw.
Not very
Deuce and a
live,
3 busy,
but, yeah, live.
but still better than average. I mean, to be drawing live against a Pat hand like this is doing well. Uh-oh.
Cool.
For a second, I thought maybe heroism was afoot.
Yeah.
But instead, Nakamura will flat take 1, and Gostisa.
So we saw Gostisa snow already. This is a spot where I mean, presumably, given that he's made some good no-limit deuce decisions so far, he's going to bet this when check 2. So, you know, does Nakamura know that he snowed the King 5-5-3-3 earlier? Will it make him more likely to call if he catches something? I mean, obviously, if he catches one of the rare deuces or 3s, okay, pair of 4s, so probably won't matter.
Yeah, when you pair bottom pair, you don't see it so much. But when that top card pairs every now and again, you'll see that bold bluff when you know you have just absolutely no showdown value whatsoever. But against the Pat hand, it's different.
It doesn't matter. And actually, sometimes pairing the better cards is better to bluff, like pairing your deuce or whatever is better than actually pairing like a 10 or like a 6.
I feel as though you may have been involved in one of the most remarkable no-limit deuce hands that I ever covered during the World Series. And I don't know if you had 2 pair and were Pat, got called by 1 pair, or if you made 1 pair and called a Pat hand. Or if you were even involved in that hand. I know you were at the table, angry John
I think
Monette.
I did make 1 pair and call.
And called correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the
Yes.
at the 10K final table
Yes.
that I won.
Yes. I mean, that there, for me,
Well, yeah, this one, but not
was
the
one of the most insane things I'd ever seen.
I was like,
Buddy, you can play 8 game. I'll give you a 10-minute lesson.
yeah.
And you'll teach me after 10 minutes. Like Sean Perry
Sean
did.
Perry style.
Your range is capped there, bro. I have to jam. I'm like, okay, good. Quick study.
Good. Yeah.
Learn fast.
Yeah, you can pray more. You can.
You play 8 game?
Yes.
Oh, good. See? If he can do it.
How much patting with the queen do we do?
Oh, it definitely happens. Like I expect if he raises here and the big blind calls and draws 2, he's going to pat behind because his draw isn't, you know, you draw 1 to the 10-8-6.
But never against a draw 1?
I do think against a draw 1, he'll draw to the 10-8-6. Yeah, because it's also kind of about the implied odds of the hand as well, and even the sort of the way the implied odds impact your ranges.
No cards.
I mean,
No
I'm
cards,
not saying I
but
would never do it, but
Yeah.
I need to be against opponents
Then
who
I
I had
probably
like
need 3.
super specific reads, or I just felt like I had
I was
amazing
thinking maybe
tells
I need
on
2,
their
but I
bets.
guess it's like 3.
And maybe I would
3 is-
consider patting there.
Oh, man.
But I mean, in general, with that, when you can break the queen and draw to a 10 or better against like the
It's
1
actually
card big
kinda
blind
hard to,
defend
like,
there, you draw the 1.
Guess like what hands you can play. Since
Well, if you've never played it before, but once you get the hang of it, you start to get, you know, like you said, if you have more experience short-handed.
More
when you're not 7-handed, you don't have to worry about, well, what I have, a jack, a 9? And
yeah.
But 3-handed, it's different, right?
Yeah, no, it's definitely more interesting.
Yeah. Interesting, tricky. a lot more stuff you don't know the answer to. That's fun.
Of course.
Convertible jack here for Gostisa.
It's nicer to play the convertibles in position.
Well, you don't want to convert needlessly when you're out of position.
Like
the jack 8, obviously, a favorite to be best. Heads up.
Yes. The 8-6-3 deuce draw, a very good draw, though.
120.
It's 3x. Negreanu, I expect he's probably going to call here and draw 1 to the jack 9. Especially because the 9-6-5 is suited. And so what's he going to do? I actually like breaking the jack and drawing here, even though you don't get 3-bet. Given the, I mean, you guys have they have more than 3x in their stack, and making a better hand is so huge. But, you know, as opposed to keeping the jack, which is obviously likely to be the best hand. Okay. Now against Pat, this is actually a tougher spot here, drawing to a jack 9, as opposed to the last time when it was the 10-9.
You don't want to draw
this
dead.
happened last time.
Yeah.
I was going to take 1, and now I need 2.
Yeah, but this time I actually think taking 2
and then he passed.
is
maybe I'll make something better this
there
time.
is a difference between drawing to a jack 9 and a 10-9 here in these spots. Pretty sizable one.
Well, if Negreanu's going to squeeze none across twice, he actually might get excited, but it's the worst of the none acrosses, the ace, twice over that he has drawn.
Yeah, like from a theoretical perspective, you know, the jack 8 is going to be a favorite there. You know, flip side is you're out of position, you have an amazing draw. Like all in versus then as you get deeper and deeper. At some point when you get deep enough, you definitely draw to the 8-6-3. You know, are they deep enough to do that? Like I would say yes, but you know, it might be no. You know,
425?
Oh, he might have done what you said. He might have saw the double no side, because obviously if he looked at his hand, these are not the blockers you would make this play with. But if he looked at his hand and saw double, you know, 2 different no spots of different suits, so he could have the deuce 3, he could have decided to turn that into a bluff.
And when you draw 2 and then you raise, obviously for Gostisa, he knows that whatever Daniel's drawing 2 to is likely to be in front of a jack every time.
Yes.
So where
Yes.
am I at?
Yeah, he's definitely bluff catching. So by the way, this is exactly why in that other spot I said, hey, you got to consider raising with the bad 9. You know, not exactly the same spot, but when you draw 2 and you make a good hand, you got to consider raising. Why? Because there's going to be spots like this where you want to bluff, right? You know,
You want to protect that raise range.
Yes, and the no limit deuce is very much a hand where a lot of hands get turned into bluff catchers. So, you know, if you want to bluff more, you've got to go down the tree a little bit with value and not just be like, say, raising, drawing 2, making an 8, which is pretty damn hard to do, 8 or better.
Oh, Gostisa really in the blender here.
This is a really big decision for his tournament. If he calls and wins here, him and Negreanu will be neck and neck.
Oh, and he sniffs it out.
Bluffing. Pair of ace. Jack is good.
Oh.
Good hand. Nice hand. Yeah.
Nice call.
There you go.
And a nice infusion there for Rok Gostisa.
Are you really winner of this game? I doubt you.
Bet the jack.
Oh,
You see
yeah.
bet the jack, you know.
Yeah.
Bet the jack.
Yeah.
Nice call.
Classy.
Gostisa has been playing pretty well against Negreanu.
He gave you the crypto punk shit?
Yeah, I think so. It's like,
Shannon Shore, your overall series leader, pictured there in the big blind. Hendricks in the
early,
There's
though.
Seth Davies. Oh yeah,
Still
we're still
quite early.
3 events in the books. The 4th one hangs in the balance.
I made a good break, though. I had Jack 9, 6, 5, and threw the Jack away. At least I did that right.
Gostisa thought about it with the 7-6-4. Leaves it to Negreanu.
I expect Daniel to open this.
He's done just that.
Especially because Nakamura's played somewhat snug in this game.
Let's not forget that 60K big blind ante sitting out there is so tempting.
Oh, sorry.
And Negreanu will draw 2 versus the draw 1. And he comes up with what looks to be a pair of 3s.
Which
Nakamura with the king.
Not weak enough to bluff, in my opinion,
3s.
when you pair really small, drawing 2.
King good.
Very, very standard hand by all parties. Nothing to see here.
Ollie, are you telling me you shouldn't have led the Jack? Or? Are you telling him you shouldn't have led the Jack? Is that what you're telling him? Yeah. That's why I use 3 time banks.
But yeah, about the way to see your way to see card, it's beginner. Like this side. Yes.
I don't know how to do that.
So yeah, mixing up.
That's like when you're in the
When I
pit.
see all 5 at once.
As a blackjack hustler, you don't want to be sitting there shuffling chips like a pro. That's a dead giveaway. Nakamura astutely recognizing that Gostisa's manner in which he's looking at his hands here in this no-limit single draw round suggests that he doesn't have a whole lot of experience peeling 5 cards.
A 1-card 8 draw, no
450.
pair. Finds the 3-bet.
Yeah. A 1-card 10 draw with a pair for Gostisa. Would have been a lot more attractive for 1 raise, but in the face of a 3-bet.
Yeah, pretty easy fold.
Yeah.
And yeah, Negreanu can't really defend that hand. It's much too weak. Even if you do want to defend and draw 2, which, you know, I have gotten out there and done that a few times, that's the deuce 4-9 is not the hand to do that with. You got to at least have a good 2-card draw.
After
in my opinion.
a bet, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm gonna do.
You're just like, oh, I have a pretty good hand, I'll bet. That's what I'm thinking in my head. I was like, he has a hand he thinks is okay, so he's betting a little bit. I'm like, all right, well, here, raise.
Oh, like raise. Oh, no.
Yeah.
You're like, wait a minute, he can do that?
Yeah, I was like, yeah, now I have no idea what to do.
Never bluff the sucker.
Yeah.
Never bluff the fishy.
There's some
Maybe
people
you
who
told
basically
a lot.
never defend 2-card draws in those spots, but you know, if you get into thing like, let's say in these spots with that big ante, you know the guy on the button's opening 2-card 9 draws, any 1-card jack, pack queens. You know, some people in the blinds will start 3-betting a lot. They'll start 3-betting you with 1-card 10 draws and whatever.
So
And
now
all of a
the
sudden,
game
you know,
you're
you got the
waiting.
deuce 4-7.
Now he's waiting
Like,
for
yeah,
the
are you
Somehow
technically
I'm
behind
at
a
the down
1-card
game, I'm
jack
not
or
winning
1-card 10
hands.
draw? Yes. But given you're probably getting 2.5
Actually, I want to, right?
1 from the pot on direct odds, and your implied odds, in a weird way, kind of work for you because you're drawing. You don't know that they have that, but in those situations where their draws are weak, you kind of can make bigger hands than them. Like a guy with a 1-card 10 draw can make a 10. You can make a 9. Now, it's not likely you draw 2 and make an 8 or a 7. You know, I mean, this happens from time to time. And then obviously in those spots, you can, if they bet, you raise, whatever, when you make your 9 or better. So, I mean, you know, I think it's a spot where there's some people who never do it, and I'm not saying you always should, but there are dynamics where I think it's, you know, call that raise and draw 2, and everybody's like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah,
And
they think
like,
you're wide open.
You know, and I'm not saying it's always right, but I do think there's times when it is right.
Gear shift to no limit hold'em now as we leave no limit deuce behind. Jack 7 against Jack 4 and the paired 2 club flop, 3-3-9. Limp pre, check. Now the club draw materializing for Nakamura, while Negreanu binks the 7.
Yeah, Nakamura definitely might find a bluff here with his outs. Doesn't. And again, might find another bluff here with only the jack high. Not saying he has to, but could.
Nuts.
Yeah, nuts. Yeah.
Full house.
Yeah. Good enough.
You check, it's the nuts, right?
Yeah, of course,
You
of
bet
course.
a 10, you bet a 9.
Yeah, of course.
3,
So,
straight.
yeah.
5 nuts. I didn't lie.
I already gave up.
Yeah.
I hope crab.
Yeah. You go to Tokyo a lot?
Tokyo, yeah.
Spend a lot of time. Is poker there now?
No, just now we have like amusement. You know, just no real money, but
okay.
we can play like
Right.
a game.
Yeah, like
Play money.
pachinko.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Ducklings on the button for Negreanu.
How much is it? 90.
Makes it 90 to go.
Pair. Not
fair.
big.
yeah, good.
Maybe you had 2 of my cards. Huh?
Maybe probably 2 deuces. So. Very reasonable.
There are a lot of amusement spot, and some spot made my pretty polarized.
What's that thing that I was wearing? A T-shirt.
T-shirt?
I had a T-shirt during the World Series. It was like
Sting Sting.
You know what Sting Sting is?
Yeah.
Sting Sting is like 2 stacks of chips like this and 1 stack of chip like this. And I'm wearing the T-shirt, and then I looked at it, and I was like, wait a minute. Sting Sting.
Sting.
I get it now. I was wearing Sting Sting.
Yeah.
have it.
There are a lot of
I should have worn my Sting
spot.
Sting today.
Yeah, and
I don't get it.
yeah, I like a lot of phrase and like jankan mean paper scissors stone.
Yeah, rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah. Poker spot name a lot.
Yeah, I still don't know what Sting Sting is, despite the conversation that was being had.
Yeah, I feel like it was supposed to be a revelation, and yet here I remain in the fog.
Yeah.
Limp from the king high, and Negreanu with the 8-5 decides to juice it.
These guys have been, Negreanu and Gostisa have been getting after it in these limped spots in no limit hold'em. Gostisa defends.
$320 in the middle.
Oh.
And a king high flop is an all Gostisa affair.
A great flop for him, and we'll see what Negreanu does, but okay, gives up right now. They both have a diamond.
Yeah.
Negreanu has no ways to win. So how will Gostisa play his hand? Will he bet for value himself, or will he continue laying the trap? He's taking a decent amount of time thinking about what to do. So I wonder how Negreanu will, with a bet. It's not the most appealing spot for Negreanu to continue here with the 0 showdown and almost the worst diamond draw. The bet is small. Yeah, he lets it go.
Things really haven't been going Daniel's way. He's been trending in the wrong direction, and now is the short stack behind Gostisa, but remains patient as we look at the final table payouts brought to you by Storm X. 8 players did cash. Riordan, Weisman, and Chidwick already eliminated, and that's 74,200. Still looking for a home. Daniel limping the 9-6 offsuit. Nakamura with the suited 10-8. Applies the tax. And Negreanu
Oh, this is the
into
second
the
hand.
muck. Nakamura was the 2019 LAPC Player of the Series. Obviously had himself a good run there, finishing 4th in the 25K No Limit Hold'em that year at the Commerce. Also finished 14th in the first event of this U.S. Poker Open, the 10K No Limit won by Shannon Shore. And that 14th place finish good for $18,600. 26th on Japan's all-time money list. And here he is making it 120,000 to go.
Cheap leader. Cheap, I can't.
And Gostisa into the muck with the king deuce.
Chips have slid around a little bit. Nakamura, very
Right, last
slight
hand, yep.
chip up.
Yep.
Very clear
break.
lead. Negreanu's lost
Okay.
quite a few, and Gostisa's been
Yeah.
the recipient
Okay,
of
okay.
those.
Just pee-pee.
Yeah. Just
Everybody pee-pee.
yeah.
There we go.
That's perfect.
90.
And Nakamura is starting to show increased signs of activity here, sitting on this lead where Gostisa and Negreanu are now sort of jockeying to avoid losing contact with the field. And Gostisa folds the ace-9, leaving it to Negreanu with the ace-7 suited, which has Nakamura in a world of hurt pre.
As Nakamura should, with a commanding chip lead right now, put a little more pressure
Call.
on.
90, right? There we go.
Daniel flats for the extra 50. 240 in the middle. And an art gallery flop here. Not the paint that Nakamura needed, but he does have position.
Versus quarter pot with ace high and the backdoor club draw, I like a continue here and expect Daniel to.
Sure enough, Negreanu calls the extra 60,000, and that's actually a somewhat welcome sight for the ace high, that third queen, is it not?
Yeah, certainly. I mean,
improving to ace jack.
If you were good, you're still good. Your opponent's a little bit less likely to have a queen. So far in all of these most of these type of spots, Nakamura hasn't really laid out like a big multi-street, like no equity.
Oh,
oof.
The check back and then the king on the river. Really nasty stuff.
I guess that's not true. He did in PLO. But PLO has been the game where he's definitely played the most aggressive, in my opinion.
And now he's got to feel great about queens full of kings with 360 in the middle. Very fortunate for Nakamura. He was just in jail. Now he's scooping.
He's definitely going to bet
300.
It's an uncomfortable spot for Daniel, who, I don't blame him for considering a call here, and I wonder what he'll come up with. Because it's a spot like versus the button range, you guys can open a bit more. You definitely, let's say Nakamura had a few value hands. Does this make a lot of sense, especially given the size down the river, for a pair of eights or a jack? Maybe not. So now it's like either the 4 queens or the king.
All right.
So you can talk yourself into some calls, but definitely very reasonable to fold as well. So he did think about it and found the right play.
A little bit of assistance in the form of a heart also. Every now and again, maybe Nakamura value betting a flush. But nevertheless, Negreanu trending in the wrong direction as We head to a break. He sits on 1.3 million. Gostisa at 1.7, and Tamon Nakamura, the man of the moment. Rast and I will step aside and be back shortly.
That happened in that particular situation. That's another thing to consider, is that if you make kind of weird, goofy, non-GTO plays, but it makes your opponents play bad, then even though it wouldn't, be recommended by a solver, it could still be a good play.
And feeling a little frisky, Tamon opens to 45,000 with the Queen 4 suited on the button. Fairly standard, but obviously not quite the ace-king of a hand ago. 7-8 off for Chidwick, and he will defend for the extra 25K. To the flop we go with 120,000 in the middle. Wow. Queen 9 deuce. Top pair.
So again, Nakamura, he actually has a pretty decent hand here to mix checkbacks. Queen with the backdoor flush on a bad kicker. So yeah, I kind of like this because his kicker is so bad.
Oh, and now Chidwick picks up an open-ender on the turn, courtesy of that check back. So
I think Chidwick's going to bet here a lot, and he might even choose a big sizing. There's a very good chance this won't work out for Nakamura. I mean, won't work out for him, since Nakamura is basically slow playing top pair and probably shouldn't fold to almost any run out here. Yeah, he's going big, which makes a lot of sense. So in my opinion, Nakamura should be pretty happy with this. This is a draw-heavy board, and he checked back top pair. It's pretty much at the top of his range, and even though there's going to be some times he's just going to get shown, 2 pairs, something that draws out of him on the river, I'm pretty sure you just call here and call almost any river, frankly.
Obviously, Nakamura's hand is heavily under-repped with that check back. But he understands the situation that's been created by virtue of the line that he has taken, and therefore he makes the call, which was a 50K overbet to full pot, and the river looks fairly safe as Nakamura is blocking the 4-5.
Chidwick might give up on this river. I would expect him to continue on basically any club that didn't make his straight, right? Especially given that he has the 8 of clubs in his hand. That's like 100% bluff follow through in my opinion. But this total blank, he's we'll see what he chooses, but it's a spot where, he gives up.
That call from Nakamura on the turn just really suggests strength, and Chidwick deeming it unwise to pursue this pot any further, and Tamon able to check back and take down a very nice pot. And you see the power of the check back there in a pot that would have been considerably smaller had Nakamura taken the very straightforward line and c-bet it. And for that matter, to most of the opposition that he faces out here.
He's a beast. He plays great. And he's one of those guys who basically every time I played with him, it seems like he's just always playing his A game,
And it's so strange because it feels almost like he's not mortal in that respect, because to execute at the highest level consistently, time in and time out, under all sorts of circumstances, there's so many variables that go into being able to pull that off, and it just seems like he's got them all in a row each and every time he shows up to play.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that it takes. I mean, one of them is a definite love for the game. Like, you have to like what you're doing to show up and focus, concentrate for hours. But then, also a presence of mind and willingness to kind of be in the moment, right? I think, not be distracted. So, he's captured a lot of that, and it allows him, I think, to, I have a different sort of, people talk about on A game. I mean, to me, A game is, I'm a bit more strict with that consideration than I think a lot of people. I mean, A game is not just showing up and not being tilted and kind of like playing your hands. It's being focused and trying to make the best play all the time and a deep level of concentration, which I think actually most people are not on their A game most of the time, but Chidwick is one of the few people that kind of is.
Limped in with this A7 suited against the chip leader, check calling 20,000 on the Queen 4 deuce board as Negreanu has outflopped him. Now has queens and 4s with a good kicker, facing a second check from Chidwick. Negreanu trying to decide how to proceed. And half pot is the answer.
Yeah, I mean, the queen's a good card for Daniel, basically. I mean, other than directly improving his hand with a king or a 4, this is probably the best card because it makes it less likely that your opponent has a queen, which was already beating you. I mean, that said, if they did have a queen, you know, now they can't beat you can't beat them. But the first part of that equation is more important, that they're less likely to have a queen. No back-to-back.
It bears mentioning, Brian, but the final tables in these PokerGO Tour events, like the US Poker Open, are often nightmare fuel. And when you look out at a lineup like this, truly there's
All in?
All in.
not a lot of soft spots, not a lot of Achilles out there.
No. No, a solid final table. Oh, wow.
2 black 5s for Wiseman, the all-in from the small blind, leaving Nakamura with a bit of a decision. This is a big pot to be played with ace-jack offsuit.
Wow.
And he's left to determine exactly what Dylan's range is in this situation.
It's a big shove here. I mean, we're talking 37 blinds, so a pretty tough ICM spot for Nakamura here, which, yeah.
And he's... Welcome back. The home stretch, the 2022 US Poker Open event number 4, half of the field already gone, and it is these 3 who remain, along with yours truly, Ali Nejad and Brian Rast. We look to crown a champion. Blinds ticking up to 25 and 50,000 as you look at the Global Poker seating chart. Riordan, Weisman, and Chidwick eliminated in that order, and it looked to be Negreanu and Nakamura as a given for heads up when Gostisa was oh so short, and now the young man's done very well for himself, moving up to 1.7 million as level 16 is upon us, leaving Negreanu, the chip leader, coming into the event in 3rd place with 1.3. 72 bigs for Nakamura, 34 for Gostisa, and 25 for Daniel. And the chip leader gets a walk to start things off.
You had 2 jacks, I had 2 jacks.
Yeah. Total blinds in the tournament down to about 130, just over 130.
Yeah.
See? Smart.
Is that metric the sort of threshold that you use to evaluate how likely it is that you're going to see eliminations or like just all-ins and whatnot?
Yeah, and I think it's a useful metric to think about, like about how much longer should there be, what's going to happen with some of the play.
Those just joining us, 40-minute levels, 30-second shot clock, standard and customary in these PokerGO Tour events, but not so standard. The big bet mix, no limit hold'em, pot limit Omaha, and deuce to 7 single draw. Oftentimes you'll find players who will come out just to play this event, maybe not any of the others because they're such fans of mixed games.
You know, I feel like this big bet mix, it's come, the World Series has had a big bet mix event, which I will say that I was a big part of getting that in there. I talked a lot with them and Jack and whatever, even the structure, such thing as having an ante in every game, and in the Omaha it started in the big bet mix tournament there. And that was kind of based off of, maybe you've been aware, Ali, but we've been playing this. It's no longer big bet only, but it started as a big bet only mix, like maybe, I'm trying to think about it.
Is this you
like
and Marcus?
7 years ago. We had Marcus, Matt Kirk. Some of the initial players were Andrew Roble, Scott Seaver played
Lyle
quite
Berman,
a big.
I think,
Lyle
plays.
did not play the big bet mix, but he has been playing the hybrid in the last year.
Yeah,
but,
I ran into him recently at Aria, and that's what he was up to.
See Aaron Katz and, you know, some other players who I'm not going to list everybody right now. I think Tom Dwan actually played the first time or two, but hasn't played since then.
And just absolutely stratospheric stakes. I mean, you're not, it's not for the faint of heart.
But the actual mix was, let's say, 7 games or something. So this is a very abbreviated big bet mix. But the actual big bet mix we were playing was no limit hold'em, PLO, PLO 8. No limit single draw, no limit deuce to 7 single draw, pot limit deuce to 7 triple draw, pot limit 5 card double draw high, that was in there.
Ooh, that's a tough one to have a lot of reps in.
Pot limit super stud 8 or better. And
Kings.
Oh, wow. Pot limit super stud. I've actually played a touch
You're not
of
calling
that game.
anyway, so
Meanwhile, it is Gostisa who picks off Nakamura's
100K
50K on the river there.
You had, I think you
In
had
the,
full house.
This is the one with the
100K
wood plaques that you
Right.
guys had, right? Made
100K
special.
buy-in with no cap.
Oh,
So as stacks got deep, it was a little,
Like before, when I called you
wild.
pair 8s. Pair 8s and a full house, just in case. Just in case the
Yikes.
8s are no good, full house.
A lot of expensive equity denial
So
going
we had
on there.
flush, just in case, full house.
yeah.
The game has since morphed into a hybrid game with
Just in case you just pot. I can
recently
still
been
call.
playing 5 and
I
10K
hope,
limit.
you said pot and I
And then
said pot.
most of the big bet games are 1 and 2K, all with an ante.
You have to balance things out if you're going to put limit games into the mix,
Yeah.
where you don't want the disproportionate.
Yes,
You know,
and
stakes.
it's a 100 big blind cap on the big bet, so it's a
Yeah.
200K cap on the 1 and 2K.
I think offsuit hand is really bad.
50 bets.
For this
I call that
seven?
game the hybrid, not the big bet
I'd
mix.
like
Yeah.
It's my
10,
term for
7,
it.
5 deuce, nothing.
Rainbow, no flush.
Rainbow.
That's good in the other game.
There's plenty of
Oh,
people at
yeah.
home right now
One more card. I
wondering
draw,
when we
I
can get
draw.
your crew into the PokerGo studio to
Easy,
watch
easy.
that sort of action. As to be a fly on the wall when massive sums are being exchanged is every poker fan's dream. They get their fix a little in high-stakes poker, but obviously you don't get to see some of these more exotic games. And oftentimes the trouble is not only do the small fraternity of players who participate in these sorts of games not necessarily want to divulge what they're doing to the general public, let alone one another, but technology-wise, it's also difficult to work out a means by which to broadcast all of those games.
Yeah.
You know,
I have a feeling that particular game is not going to make its way. I do think there's a chance, and I did actually even play one time when it was more the traditional 8 game or whatever, something more similar to the, let's call it the Bobby's Room mix, with a different, slightly different group of players than say the big bet mix / hybrid, but I feel like that would be more likely than the game I just said.
trouble in paradise here, Rast, as a limp pot between Negreanu and Nakamura, where Daniel has got himself the 9 high straight up against the 8 high straight, but that incredibly big redraw for Nakamura, who is betting 50,000 with that gut shot straight flush draw. The 8 also relevant insofar as backdoor full house opportunities would emerge, and now the King of Hearts on the turn gives Nakamura the best hand and leaves Negreanu drawing dead. Daniel checking a second time after calling 50K, and $250,000 in the middle, 1.2 behind for Daniel. Nakamura with the check back. River pairs the 8. Nakamura not full, but he is blocking.
Yeah, Daniel can't love his hand right now. But I think he determines that the 9 high straight is just a little too good to bluff with, and he's going to just try to get the showdown. And now Nakamura, with about as small a flush as possible, but a relevant 8 blocker, decides to go for value.
And the 9 high straight just deteriorated on both streets here. You see Daniel just frustrated, facing a $150 on the end.
In terms of bluff catching, I mean, the Queen of Hearts helps some, blocking a few flushes. And, you know, Nakamura has already shown he kind of understands PLO well enough to know when some hands have no showdown and bluff. Right, he did that before with that hand on the, I think it was 5, 6, 7, and then run out Jack Queen board, and he bluffed the pair of 5s. And Gostisa folded the 7s and 6s 2 pair. So, you know, especially if Negreanu knows about this hand at this point, you know, he's aware that Nakamura knows how to turn things into bluffs. So he pays it off.
And the downward spiral continues for Negreanu, and I can't say that any of it really rests in some sort of
Double suited.
different decisions that maybe he could have made. He really
Good
just has
hand.
had bad spots.
Weak double suited.
Yeah,
Not good enough to raise, re-raise.
He went for attacking
seven.
in that PLO
Yeah,
pot.
I guess so.
Versus Gostisa.
Yeah.
The draw two and raise.
No, when he got limp re-raised by a double
And I had
suited
queen
hand in
heart too,
PLO.
so-
And then
I see.
additionally,
But I thought maybe full house.
the
I
failed
also
bluff
had eight,
in no limit
so
deuce,
I
but
Oh, you had an 8 too.
Yeah, they're all
so
reasonable decisions.
Right.
Nothing that where I'm like, oh yeah, definitely, don't like that. I don't remember. What was the no limit deuce hand?
Gostisa, I think, padded the jack and Jack 8, and
Oh,
then
and
he
he
drew
bluffed,
2
yes.
and made aces, and then
Let's-
bluffed. Not sure whether or not he just squeezed none across twice. We don't know, but regardless,
It looks
and
like
you
he
will
knew
see
his
that.
hand.
Some of the time, you will see that though, where a player has a 50-50 and just decides, okay, I don't want to actually know. There's a chance I have it. That way, I can prevent myself from giving something away, and I'll go for it.
20?
Yeah.
200.
Raise to 200,000.
Daniel limping the button here, and Nakamura keeping
I don't
the
even know why I
pressure
put
on.
50 in this hand.
Picking
I
up
want to see flop.
more Daniel
Well,
bucks.
I was sort of into a flop, and then he raised, and I said, move on.
Nakamura has been impressive,
Yeah.
Brian.
I will say I feel like having watched this, if I was going to, I think PLO in this group is his best game. I like the way he's played PLO. He's creative. He's made a lot of good decisions. He knows how to find bluffs in this game, and he's played quite well in PLO with this group of players.
And he's run hot in the PLO at the right time, as we see him with 2 queens and 2 sevens, diamonds to boot.
It doesn't hurt that the guy who has position on him, Gostisa, it seems to be the game he's wants to play the least.
Yeah, you see Daniel just snake bit right
Big
now.
stack book.
Below 20 big blinds for Negreanu.
How much do you have now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would
How
have
much do you
Maybe around
I would have defended that as
4
Daniel.
million.
I do think it's a hand where if you decided for ICM reasons maybe you didn't want to only 2.5x with an ante, you let it go. But I think because he's kind of so much shorter than Gostisa right now, it's almost double. I'd start to just play more for straight chip EV, and I probably would have defended his hand. But yeah, it's it's close. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong.
More limping from Daniel, and this time some relief as Nakamura does not punish. Jack 10-8-3, rainbow.
Wow, 5-6-3, right?
For Daniel, yes, the wrap.
Yeah, it's someone
Nothing
who,
cooks for Nakamura.
Yep, and versus a bet, it's a snap fold.
Well, we saw Gostisa come back from this sort of relative depth to be where he is now. Far from impossible for Negreanu to achieve the same feat.
Had less than Negreanu has right now, right?
In bigs, in terms of bigs?
Oh, yeah, maybe not
Yeah.
in terms of bigs. It was about the same in terms of bigs, right?
Exactly. I think he had that $500,000 with the blinds at it's either 15 or 30, 15-30 or
Yeah.
10-20. Can't remember exactly, but
It might have been 25. Might have been the exact 20, basically. Oh.
double paired with spades, and Tamon will pot it. Now Negreanu has his spades covered, unfortunately.
So, yeah, actually, feels like Negreanu was in a slightly better spot last time with the 9-8-7-3 with a live flush draw than this time. I would guess equity-wise.
I had 9s again. Like exactly the same hand. It was like 9-9-6 something.
Ah, I see.
The one thing this time is he does have the ace over card.
Just call so I can see a 9 on flop and then we can go.
So that
I have a king, king, deuce, deuce.
Oh man, I had an ace.
Well, Tamon kind of lets him off the hook there, but when you see a player begin to increase their raising frequency, Brian, especially once they've managed to amass a very substantial stack,
100,000 minimum to come in.
you start to ask yourself how much of this is just stone cold abuse. And every now and again you draw a line in the sand maybe, and of course they're capable of waking up with something. As we've seen, Tamon has had reasonable holdings. And we now shift to no limit deuce to 7 single draw.
8 behind,
Yeah, I mean, in PLO also you have a lot of these spots where, you know, sure, but after you call and you're not that deep, you know, you get forced to put in chips a lot, you know, the rest of your chips a lot post. But that's because a lot of the times you have pretty good equity, you know, and you're in position. So, you know, I mean, there's people who have different ways of playing, you know. Again, this is why when I was talking about it, I was kind of talking about the ICM of the situation. Now, Negreanu does have some ICM effects. He's not so much shorter than Gostisa, but once he starts getting to 50% of his chips or around that, it does become a place where I do believe the ICM effects on a stack that short, below first and even second, you know, you kind of just need to play for chips. And, you know, I think in some of those spots you can defend, even if you think, you know, the guy's pushing equity with either the ace, queen, queen, or the king, king, or whatever.
Looking down the line, the next 5 events of our 2022 U.S. Poker Open there. That 15K 8 game jumps off the page for you and I, of course, as fans of the mixed game streets.
Yeah, I'll be playing that.
Gostisa with the gut shot 9-7 draw on the button. Certainly will be opening.
Raise 175 total.
And you see the open sizing of 175 here. Perhaps a little rich in contrast to some of the other games in the mix, but again, that 1.5x big blind ante being considered. And Nakamura with the pat 10-9-8 here.
325,000 in the pot. You know, pat 10. I think he's deciding about maybe going all in versus what is
700.
It's 700,000 total.
Okay, or you know, definitely re-raising. He decides 700. The interesting thing about this sizing is, what does he do if his opponent goes all in? What is he doing when you know, it's kind of.
Gostisa doesn't make a meal of it as he folds rather quickly. No. But the sizing of 700, go on, finish the thought, Ras.
Well,
I'm
you are, when you make that, even though it's a big re-raise, you are giving your opponent the option to call and draw in position and play for that last million, which is not that great when you're when you got the pad 10-9-8.
Didn't feel good,
right? So I think once you start getting well under 40 bigs there, especially against that big of an open, 3.5x, I think, especially, you know, with a lot of my hands, and especially maybe a hand like the unbreakable 10 there, I probably just go all in generally, as opposed to that. The only exception being if I decided I was going to re-raise and then fold. But, you know, I wouldn't want to do that a ton, because honestly, if I'm in position there, I'd also would consider taking my convertible hands, and instead of just calling, like say the Jack 7 draw, I consider jamming that, or like the Jack 8 draw. Why? Because if my opponent breaks in position, calls, I can just stay pat.
And if they pat, you can break.
I can break, right? So, you know, yeah, it's a lot to think about, and you have to make some assumptions about how your opponent's going to play. But, you know, I think a good portion of hands versus 3.5x, I just jam for 35 bigs there as Nakamura, and the 10-9-8 falls in that range, in my opinion.
Negreanu opened the button to 125,000. Gostisa flatted and drew 1 and has made this 10-8-6. Daniel patted a queen 10 and checks back. Should he not have drawn to the 10-8-5 here?
Yeah, sorry, what? I was talking about the other hand. And
Open on the button for Negreanu. Gostisa flatted. He drew 1, made his 10-8, but Negreanu patted the queen 10 behind. He had a 10-8-5 draw.
Oh, yeah, we talked about this spot earlier. I believe this exact spot. Yes, like I said, as Negreanu with a decent 10 draw versus the 1 draw, there I'm drawing. I'm not patting the queen 10. I would pat a queen jack, but not a queen 10, especially not like queen 10 8-5. I think I'd much rather draw the 10 8-5.
So it,
but like queen jack 8-5, pat behind. Yeah.
Cost Negreanu precious chips there as he slips to 665,000 now. 10 low draw.
Nobody can have this many freaking hands in deuce in the history of deuce. I think he's played 80% of the hands. I haven't looked yet, but saying it's impressive.
All in.
See? All right, I just hope I have it.
Oh, wow.
Let me have it. That's a good start.
Double paired. Unfortunately, there will be no bluffing, but will Negreanu choose to call and draw 2 to this, Raz?
So this, again, this came up earlier when we were talking about that hand when Chidwick was still in for 10 blinds. Now Negreanu, I believe he folded, but I think you got to call here, especially it's even better you have the blockers. And actually the one hand, turns out he's not going to be in as bad shape because the 3 that Gostisia's blocking.
I have 2 good ones. Do you need
he has a 3.
Either one of those?
And Gostisia needs a deuce and a 7.
Oh, you're drawn to a 10-9? I got the deuce 3-7.
So this is going to be closer than the odds probably say, which
give him a 9 or a 10 and I don't have to worry too much.
I could probably actually look this up while we're
deuce over there too.
Deuce and 7.
Okay, burn. Down for him. Put it in the box. Let me know if I need anything.
Oh, it looks like Gostisia made the 10 and
I'm real with these freaking hands. What the hell? Come on,
Negreanu
man. Oh, geez, dead paint.
finds the queen on his first squeeze. He was drawn to a 7 if he squeezed the 6 first.
Nice. Good game, buddy.
Yeah,
good game. Fucking deuce guru over here. Oh, I have a 10, I have a 6. How do you always have somebody in? What the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
What the hell? Jesus.
I'm running really good.
So Daniel's day is done as he adds $74,000 to his
on to the next one.
Phenomenal $46 million in career tournament earnings.
No, 10-9.
That didn't go well.
10-9 something 3.
So yeah,
so it's like
because the blockers are so favorable for Daniel, he's actually 47.5%.
Against the draw 1?
Yes.
Wow.
Because literally the 3 that's being blocked he has, and the deuces and 7s that he's blocking the other guy doesn't have, and you know, so he's 47.5% actually.
That was really creepy.
So we're down to heads up, Brian, and we're going in with a massive chip lead for Tamon Nakamura. 4.3 million to Gostisia's 2.3. And we are looking for a champion now here in event number 4. $111,300 locked up for both players, but that 169.6 is still looking for a home.
So this also harkens back to a discussion we had, like, who knows, maybe a half hour ago or whatever. Remember about deuce when I was like, sometimes you might call and draw 2?
Yeah.
And I gave the example of, like, what if your opponent's starting to 3-bet wide and they have some 1-card 10 draws or whatever. Now, obviously, these blockers will make the odds a little better than they might be if we're saying like no blockers. But let's say with no blockers, it's probably 60-40, 10-9, whatever, versus deuce 3-7.
Look back at the champs already during this series. We saw Shannon Shore winning the no limit. Then it was Justin Young who threatened to pour some scotch into his trophy, taking down the PLO event number 2. Adam Hendricks got something for the mantle or the case in event number 3. And here,
wow, they're giving
yet another one of these trophies.
I didn't even realize it.
Looking for a home. Yeah. You got a little trophy case at the house, Rast? Or you just put them all in the attic?
Yeah, I'm remodeling my house. It's the longest remodel project of all time. But I'll probably end up keeping some of that stuff in my office.
Yeah.
Somewhere in my office.
There you go. Well, this is Finally, Gostisa finding
I
a
have
bad part
49
of the deck. Yeah.
I have best 3 card, due 3 4, but 8 seed.
I don't have too many trophies, though. The 50K, they don't give you a trophy, right?
They etch
have,
your name onto the
etch.
trophy, the Chip
Yeah,
Reese trophy.
so
That's a
I believe I got
community
something for the
trophy.
first Super High Roller Bowl win, but I believe one time my son was playing soccer in the house and knocked it over, so it's like not totally intact anymore. I think it had like 3 little glass pillars and now it only has 2.
Oh, no. Not totally intact was a very soft delivery for the fate of that trophy. That was well played. Tamon with the Jack-10 draw. Raises, gets called by Gostisa, who's going to draw 1 to the Jack-9 out of position.
1 as well.
Yeah.
Professional, not 2.
Gostisa makes a Jack-10, 9-7, and Nakamura hits the queen. How is he going to proceed?
Check.
I have Jack.
Jack. Got queen. I got.
Felt like a really bad Jack, too.
Small one heads to Gostisa, who has his work cut out for him here, but obviously with this big bet mix, Brian, roles can get reversed very quickly.
Certainly.
Yeah, I don't need it. Just kidding.
I mean,
Just me. I'm going to take those.
No, I need it.
Gostisa won it all in, he'd have 5 million and Nakamura under 2.
And this might just be the game in which we could see that happening. It is the last hand of No Limit Deuce.
Yeah. I hope keep playing this because you're being a.
It's a lot more ambitious to think you get the all-in in the No Limit Hold'em round.
Yeah, maybe. I feel like based on the way these guys have been playing, at least I haven't seen too much. I really haven't seen any aggressive pre-draw action in this game. Not, or at least not a lot, you know? I mean, people haven't taken some kind of subpar draw 1-y type hands like I've been talking about in 3-bet with them.
Well, this one isn't exactly premium for Gostisa, and we'll see what he does in response to the draw 1 in front of him.
Certainly. I mean more in terms of getting it all in, which would require, you know, re-raising.
He's going to draw 1 to this Queen 10.
Well, he's already drawing dead.
Yeah, 10-7 perfect for Nakamura.
I mean, this isn't going to get checked back, but if he leads himself, okay, he does. So now Gostisa needs to decide. You know, so this is one of those spots where when you don't get 3-bet here, you generally know your opponent doesn't have a very good
caps their
draw.
range.
That said, everybody knows that. So, you know, and when you only have a queen, it doesn't really matter if your opponent's range is caps to 9s, 10s, and jacks because, you know, you still can't beat any of that.
You have a pair?
10-7 perfect.
10-7? Wow, okay.
First hand, No Limit Hold'em.
That's a. Yeah, no limits.
So given the way these guys are playing, I actually kind of feel like this is the game where it's most likely to get all in the pre-flop or pre-draw.
No Limit Hold'em.
Yes, and the reason why is because it seems like, especially Gostisa is the most comfortable being pre-flop, aggressive pre-flop. Whereas in PLO and No Limit Deuce, I really didn't see too much. I mean, actually, Gostisa did have that one hand where he limp re-raised the 8-high double-suited hand. But that's actually why in No Limit Deuce, I didn't see one good example of that. So the pre-flop aggression that would, you know, you get more likely to get the all-in situation, other than like, you know, set up coolers.
Limp pre here. Ace high for Gostisa. Nakamura stabs with air. Understandable peel, as Gostisa will keep his man honest.
Yeah, versus the min sizing there, ace high, really incentivized to at least see another street.
Wet turn.
Yeah.
But Nakamura not in the neighborhood or mood as he checks back, and now Gostisa binks the ace.
To me here, Gostisa's very clear play on this run out is a check and try to bluff catch. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, I mean, I guess you bluff your missed spades or whatever, but the problem you have, I mean, I guess what you're hoping is that your opponent has a 9 or a 10 and they're going to call you. The flip side is that your opponent's going to have a lot of bluffs, no equity bluffs that they might be able to find because the ace is supposed to be a better card for them than you. So
200K bet and take it.
Interesting decision to bet.
10-7 off limps. 9-5 checks back. Two pair on the all heart board here for Nakamura, and Gostisa does have a flush draw.
Yeah, this pot could definitely get bigger, especially if Gostisa decides to start betting on the flop. He's got a couple ways to backdoor into, well, definitely straight draws on the turn at the very least.
Gostisa fires 75,000. And on these monotone boards, these two pairs really have a choice between trying to prevent the turn from showing up and creating problems, or just flatting and seeing what develops. And that development comes in the form of an 8 of clubs, which now gives Gostisa the open-ender, along with the lone heart draw. A second check from Nakamura.
This is going to be a big pot, Ali, because I'll tell you what, Gostisa is 100% following through to bluff on this. I don't see Nakamura folding, and there's a very good chance that, you know, the thing that'll keep this pot from being big would be a heart on the river, but on most blank river cards, I would expect a lot of follow-throughs.
3 barrels.
Yeah.
Well,
10.
the fuse is lit here, Rast. 300,000, a full pot-size bet from Gostisa on the turn. Nakamura cannot fold. So he calls the 300,000, pot up to 900. Little over a 2-to-1 SPR, complete whiff on the river.
I really think he's probably going to follow through. I'm curious to see what size he picks. But I expect a follow-through bluff on this.
Could he bomb it for the full amount?
Could. I mean, it's only like 2x. I mean, I would guess if he bombs it, it'll be more like 1.5x. But maybe he goes for all of it.
Are any of the chips beyond 900K serving a purpose?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, and he does move all in here. And that puts Nakamura in a real tough spot, Rast. Straights and flushes abound.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You know, he has a pretty good hand. It's a tough. This is a tough spot. I mean, the thing is, when someone bets this big here, as strong as 2 pair is, you're now mostly bluff catching, right? I mean, your opponent has a small 2 pair with like over 2x pot, like not really.
Yeah.
So.
Polarizing move here. Nakamura exercising a time bank. All he has to do, Rast, is say call, and he's the champ.
How much that?
Wow.
And Tamon recognizes that this sort of run out and progression absolutely lends itself to one of these 3-barrel types of spots.
18, 19. 90.
And listen, if he were to call and be wrong, he'd still have north of 30 bigs, which is a relevant factor as well.
and then a 9.
It's not just Spin City if he's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, really the truth is in these situations, there is no more ICM anymore. It is what it is. Like, it's a chip pot. It is nice to know that if you call and wrong, you're still in. Of course, you'll have a lot less chips.
But it's a playable depth.
Yeah.
Welcome to the blender. This is what these time banks are for.
I'm still wondering whether about that bet, that value bet with the ace. I'd love someone to go put that in a solver and tell me what the solver says. I mean, so when you go all in here, one of the hands you're targeting to fold is a hand like 2-pair, because you're basically telling 2-pair it's bluff catching. So, you know, if Nakamura calls, it will have been, hey, a good call, because, you know, he's now only bluff catching with 2-pair. If he bet like 700K on the river or something, kind of an easy call, to be honest, with 9s and 5s, because frankly, that could be a lower 2-pair, or even a hand like aces, maybe, that you know, decided to play this way before the flop.
Multiple time banks being exercised as Tamon Nakamura weighs his option.
Good call.
And we've got a champ. Nakamura says call and will win this pot and event number 4 along with 100.
Should have took me up on that bet.
$69,000. Yeah.
Good game.
Yeah, I had 2-pair, but yeah, nice.
Well played. Nice call.
Yep. Gostisa gave it all he had.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I didn't see your great brass, so yeah, that was yeah.
Gutsy work there for
good
Gostisa.
See you, Nick.
A little love from the opposition as Rope will take home $111,300. But the man of the moment, Japan's Tamon Nakamura, who will add a tidy figure to his previous $390,000 in career tournament earnings. A big boost to him, especially as the series carries on. And there is the trophy for Tamon. Nice moment for him. He joins the top 5 in the overall series standings. Negreanu 6th with 167 points as that 50K overlay looks for a home. But in the meantime, we've got 4 in the books here at the 2022 U.S. Poker Open. Certainly hope you enjoyed today's coverage. Don't forget there's more coming your way tomorrow. But in the meantime, on behalf of Brian Rast and our entire crew here in Las Vegas, I'm Ali Najad saying good night, and we'll see you next time.